Regular meeting. We're gonna hello. We're gonna call this meeting to order, and we're gonna stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. We have a special guest, Pastor Jeff Gaines, and he is from the Christ Church of Winchester, so we'd like to welcome you. I saw you walk in. There you are. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And we also have a couple board members that are out tonight, so we wish them a speedy recovery. So with that, we'll get on with business and look at reviewing the agenda. I think number 20, we probably need to table the committee appointments. I think Megan wanted to handle that.
And then we have 12 and 13 technically out of order, so they need to stay on the agenda, but just go in the reverse order.
Flip-flopping?
Yes.
Flip-flopping. Any other items on the agenda?
I'd like the board to consider adding an item. I'd like to have a discussion on bullying policy across the district. I know it's just a discussion, no action on it, just some things have come to my attention personally, and just like to have a discussion on it and what we're doing about bullying and possibly what the board can do to revise any sort of policy.
Okay.
So that next meeting, maybe come back with a recommendation.
Where can we add that under?
It can be like 15A, under student services.
Just a discussion?
Yeah, bullying policy discussion, something of that nature.
Okay.
Yeah, I was able to go through a few of the things that you had asked about, and then we have some timeliness of some other situations that I think this conversation will help
Okay.
frame out for us too.
Okay, awesome.
Anything else we'd like to add or change?
Okay.
Nope. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the revisions?
So moved.
I'll second.
Who's taking notes? Where's my name?
She's down there.
Right there.
She's
there she is.
Yeah, her allergies are acting up, and she didn't want to sit up on the stage with us today.
I'll speak louder.
All right, so we have a motion by Ms. Considine, second by Mr. Tawby. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Okay, and number 3, approval of the minutes for the January 25th, 2022 regular meeting and the draft budget meeting minutes and February 8th, 2022 special meeting. Now, I have a question. Since I wasn't seen on the special meeting, can I participate in the approval of it, or do we need to separate?
And we don't have a quorum on approving that.
You couldn't vote.
Mhm. Yep, I was on, but I couldn't be.
I don't think it's,
We just went through all of that too with KSBA. I think the approval is okay. She just
yeah,
could
because
not.
you could watch it. You
Right.
know what happened.
Yeah.
I don't see an issue with that.
Okay.
I think on the February 8th meeting, to your point, we need to change the motion from a 5-0 to a 4-0. on the February 8th meeting on item 31. On item 31 of the February 8th meeting, should we change that to a 4-0 vote instead of a 5-0 vote? I believe we should.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe we should.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was looking on this
Yeah,
31
I
now.
was too, yeah.
Now I know what we're talking
Yeah.
about for the special meeting. Ms. Nance, do you have that to amend? Okay, thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve the January 25th and February 8th meeting notes with addendum.
A second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those not in favor? 3-0. All right. Student and staff recognition, school attendance awards.
Okay.
You need some help or you?
Yeah,
Okay.
please. So we are excited to have this fine group of students. We have 2 classes that are being recognized. We're going to start with Miss Abner's class, and you want to go down, and I'll hand them to you. So Miss Abner's class will be along the front, and then we'll have Miss Harney's class come up and be at the top. Haley Cecil.
Unfortunately, several of our cheerleaders are cheering the regional dance.
I mean, look at them go, right? Ms. Tyra Flowers, Layton Griffith, Natalie Hall, Taylor Hall, Haley Hill, that's Miss Haley. Miss Mackenzie Heatley,
Yes.
Ashley Martin, Miss Ella Martin, Miss Haley Morton, Torin Oldham, Bailey Ratcliffe, I'm sorry. Miss Amanda Skipworth. Mr. Dylan Sturgill. And is Miss Abner there? Okay, I'm gonna have you come up in just a second and we'll get yours also. So now Miss Harney's class, and then I'll read the statement for everyone too. Caitlin Bailey, Madison Berry, Destiny Cruz, Blake Embry, Lindsay Howard, Tanner Moorfield. It might just be us up here.
Okay, wouldn't it?
Thank you so much. Congratulations. Ethan Muncie. All right. Amanda Perry. Brinley Perry. You're in everything too. Miss Mackenzie Roper. Emily Schooler. Taylor Underwood. Olivia Walling. And then Miss Lauren Harney. And then Ms. Richardson, actually, can you guys, everybody scoot in, we'll do the center, and I'll come to the other side, and you stay there, is that okay? We'll have Ms. Harney on the end. Do a picture. Thank you.
do so.
Okay, thank you guys. Stay up here just 1 second. So the Clark County ATC Health Science Department recently completed certification testing for the phlebotomy technician course. We are excited to announce that this course was completed with 100% pass rate.
Woohoo!
All 27 students, all seniors, passing the National Health Career Association's exam, and these students are now certified as phlebotomy technicians. They have worked very hard to complete all of their required modules, required live, venipunctures, okay, and study for a very difficult exam, all while many of them are also working and participating in other sports and extracurricular activities. Many of these students are not only completing this career pathway, but another one as well. We could not be more proud of them and look forward to seeing them working in the healthcare field in the future, especially right here in Clark County. The program is taught by Ms. Lauren Harning in her first year of teaching, and Ms. Heather Abner in her 13th year of teaching. And Mr. Kendra, the principal, is also here tonight, so congratulations again, guys. I'm not going to mess up tonight. Okay. Then the next thing that we're going to do is start with our preschool elementary banner for the highest attendance. And that award tonight goes to Sheer Elementary with a 93.50%.
Mr. Quincy asked my baby shark to
Oh,
accept it.
Oh, baby shark.
We're going to get this one. You might hold that over. I'll cut it down.
I'm so nervous.
So yeah.
Yes.
Ready? Stand right here.
So that you can see what the banner says, buddy.
Yeah, let's, one more again. Sorry.
There you go. Good job. Smiling.
Congratulations.
You've done this many times.
As soon as you're gonna jinx me, and then I can't get it. Okay, and then our banner for the intermediate school is Baker with a 93.11% attendance.
Strode's getting the ball.
Thank you. And the attendance ball overall winner is Strode. Ms. Thompson is here to.
Gotta catch it.
And then while Mr. Richardson is getting that, some special shout outs for attendance. Comfrey, 4th grade with a high attendance for the month. Justice, 1st grade, had a great high attendance for the month. Sheer, 3rd grade. Yeah. She's on a roll.
Yeah, she sure is. That's my hair to stick it up.
Oh, I know, when. Thank you. Strode Kindergarten had a high attendance month. Baker 5th grade, RDC 8th grade, and Phoenix 9th grade, as well as DRC 2nd grade were our big shout outs for our school. So,
Good,
great
good deal.
job. Thank you.
It's calling down up here.
It is, that podium move back to the middle.
Do we have anybody signed in for public comment? Okay, perfect. All right, on to number 4. Consider approval and second reading to additions to policy 03.2232. Dr. Parrish.
So you will have the new and improved from KSBA policy in front of you. Nothing really changed, just the blue part about the classified accruals going, and it's going to cover all accruals too. KSBA recommended that we just change one policy, so that's what's before you instead of the other 5 or 6. So.
And Dr. Parrish is our Director of Human Resources.
Any discussion? Any questions for Dr. Parrish? Do I have a motion?
Make motion to
Okay.
approve. Dale.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 5, consider approval to use bank time for the current fiscal year 21-22 school year calendar. Dr. McComas.
I feel like it's in there, but since I wasn't here last year and I went back through and had Miss Nance look at the motions, when the calendar was adopted last year for the 21-22 school year, makeup days are embedded in there as with M's, but we also have bank time based on our school schedules. So there's additional days that are captured inside the calendar that we can utilize for, like, that we've called one snow day. Our NTI days are NTI days. But we have one snow day, and I'd like the flexibility to use our bank time, which I think I have, but since I could not find it in previous minutes, I wanted to make sure that we approved the current calendar that we have so that we can utilize our bank time when we, hopefully we don't have any more, but if we do, that we have the discretion to do that and or to add the days.
Okay.
Any discussion or questions for Dr. McComas?
So as of now, there's only one snow day
Mhm.
that you're looking at using those extra hours for that day.
And we have 2 NTI days left.
Okay.
And the state did give us flexibility with what they call now, there's remote learning. It's like, it's not virtual learning. They've got another classification title to it. So NTI days are back to that traditional model of like inclement weather. And then you now have additional remote learning days. So if there is one school that's affected, even one classroom that's affected most, severely with closures due to COVID, then you can go into like a remote learning for that classroom and or that school or multiple schools. It's not to be used necessarily district-wide.
Okay.
So we do have some flexibility if there were that to start creeping back up into our community, but we do have 2 NTI days left. And the reason why we ended up using a snow day that unfortunately we didn't need is that I was on pins and needles with the possibility of power outages and ice, and we didn't want to contend with that and folks trying to get their kids shuffled back and forth somewhere to do NTI days.
Okay.
So retrospect, I wish I would have used one, but that was the decision that we made just because we were
Yeah.
worried about the power outages. So this gives us the flexibility to be able to use our bank time, and we currently have 4 days of bank time. And we used one of them, if you remember, when we made the amendment to the calendar for the Thanksgiving break. So we approved it then, but I didn't think about using it, asking you all about using it for, bad weather.
Okay.
Hopefully we won't have any bad weather except rain,
Yeah,
flooding.
I know. And that's almost worse than
Yes.
the snow that we're dealing with. But we do have 2 NTI days left.
Okay.
Any other comments?
So the last day for students will, right now, remain May 26th.
Correct.
Correct.
Mhm. And then, of course, if we have days, that doesn't mean that staff get that off. We'll end up using that, for professional learning, development,
Right.
things that they'll do in the school, so the staff will have to work to make up
Right.
their contract time.
I make a motion to approve the use of bank time for the current 21-22 school calendar year.
And I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Number 6, consider first reading of fiscal year 22-23 school calendar. Ms. Bush?
Good evening. I'm Christy Bush. I'm your Director of Student Support Services. We are here this evening to talk about the calendar for next year. Do you have any questions or concerns about the uploaded information after our meeting?
I can't find the survey.
You should see a parent survey. You should see a staff survey. 2 options.
You want to run through the highlights of the survey and the comparison between staff and
Absolutely.
parents real quick, please?
The only difference in the parent survey that was given and the staff is there's one tweak to a question. The staff survey asked on number 4, do the teacher work days build in for the professional meetings, follow-up programs work? Do they like those type of days? And the answer, 89.5, was yes. And that was a really good positive answer for us. It was tweaked to the parents to ask when teachers do have work days into the built calendar, does this cause any issue for family or child care providing? 89.9 said no. So the 2 questions were the same, but they were worded differently depending on the staff or the parent receiving it. The main difference is Thanksgiving week. Staff wanted the whole week, and that was at 67.4. And parent on that was 91.3. I'm sorry, hold on. 62.7 said just the 3 days, Wednesday through Friday. So the traditional Thanksgiving week that we're used to.
I was really a little surprised by that.
Me
I
too.
thought they were gonna really I know they appreciated it when we did it, but I thought it would be something that they would wanna
Hang on to.
hang on to. Mhm.
But they were mirror images of each other except that question number 3.
That was the big difference, wasn't it? Yeah.
So in order to, if you're going to give a survey, we want to make sure that we look at that data and we respect that data and use it to the best of our ability. So option 2A is putting in workdays, teacher workdays throughout the year, and allowing for the 3-day November Thanksgiving holiday. So we felt like in the committee, as they voted, that was a compromise with the parent survey and the staff survey to have 2A as the number 1 option.
You have a week there in August, and you have, it's the week of August 8th, and they're in red, the Ps. Is that-
Professional development days.
Okay, that's for
Now that
teachers?
doesn't, yes ma'am.
Okay.
That does not mean that they have to be that specific on those particular days, but that is just a place that we have to have when we upload the calendar. It has to be before the opening day for KDE.
Oh,
So
okay.
we just plug those in. There are 24 hours required by the staff, certified staff. So we just place those there. But they could be, anything after July 1,
Okay.
just to make sure we allow those. Now, the second option was 2A, and you will see the difference. Is our election days are not teacher work days. There's when school is closed, and that is why you see a difference of the last day of school pushed out 2 days. You will also notice on that 1A that there's only 1 teacher work day, and that's in the middle of March. And if you would like to know, the 2 that the calendar committee omitted, 1 was making our day end, our whole entire year end after May the 30th, which is a holiday, which made that a very bad attendance day if you're going to have Memorial Day on the 30th or the 29th and you want to come back to school on the 30th. And then the other option was a week of Thanksgiving break on 2B. We actually looked at 4 different calendars. So, and that was a week of Thanksgiving. So the committee had chosen and voted to throw out 2B and 1B. And that's how we got to the calendars in front of you. Now, if you also look, one is 174 days and one is 176. The difference in the two is with 176, we cannot get in teacher work days because they're contracted for 187, and that would push them into, I think, 191 actually. So that is why you have a difference of 174 and 176, is to get in those teacher work days. Semester instructional, 87 and 87. And on election days, we can be in the building adult-wise, even though there are polling stations, just not students.
Thank you, Ms. Bush.
You're welcome.
So which one are we recommending?
The
2A,
committee would
2A?
like to recommend 2A.
Okay.
Is their number 1.
Any questions? So we'll have you back next month for the second reading,
If there are no
if there are no questions.
questions.
or
Thank you.
changes. Thank you. Number 7, consider approval of district-wide upgrade to the Interruptible power supplies. Mr. Kaysen.
Hi. Thanks. So we have a lot of networking equipment, routers and switches that you really can't just plug straight into a wall. You have to plug them into things called UPSs, uninterruptible power supply. It does a couple of things. One is in case there's a power outage, it provides battery backup so we can shut them down the right way. And then it also kind of filters the little power spikes and little brownouts that occur hundreds of times each day that nobody ever knows about until they damage your networking equipment, and it gets corrupted faster than it's supposed to. So it's just one of those behind-the-scenes types of equipment that you would only know that exists if you went into server rooms and switch closets, but you would definitely know about it if they failed, if they stopped working. So about 7 years ago, we purchased 39 of them, and a large portion of those have started to go bad. They started to drop, and so we have money in our E-rate budget for a purchase of 51 of them, and so all I'm seeking tonight is just approval of the proposal that I'm put forth as far as 51 new UPSs. Because I'm seeking E-rate funds, I'm required to do a 28-day bid, which I did, and me and my 2 other people on my team sat down, spent several hours reading the bids and scoring them, and you'll see the scoring matrix in your folder. It was the winning vendor actually tied itself. If you notice, it scored 94 on both of the proposals it set forth. We essentially, when I did the bid, I basically told the vendors we're not sure what route we want to go, so we were open to multiple types of UPSs. And so a couple of vendors, such as the one that won, Volta, they submitted a bid for lithium-ion batteries and a bid for the older lead-acid batteries. And so after the scoring was done, they kind of tied themselves. So we have 2 Volta options, both scoring 94 points. My recommendation is we go for the more expensive lithium-ion option. And a couple things there is don't be floored by the $94,800, because after the 85% E-rate discount, it only comes to, I think, just over $14,000. So we would actually only be paying Volta $14,000. If we went with the cheaper lead-acid option, we'd be paying, after E-rate discount, about $9,000. So it's a difference of $5,000, which is nothing to scoff at, but I think it's definitely worth the purchase. And the other thing is, I'm not asking for money from the general fund, like extra money. This was built into my E-rate budget. But because it's such a big ticket item, Dr. McComas and Ms. Ellis and myself felt that it was worth bringing before the board just to seek approval anyway. But the lithium-ion option doubles the life expectancy of the UPS itself, and it's a newer technology. And honestly, we're just excited to try them out. As excited as you could be about UPSs. We're excited. So I'm seeking approval for the Volta lithium-ion bid for $94,811.
Hate to see what, you got new routers.
Oh, yeah.
Pandemonium.
So this is already in your budget?
It is.
Okay.
Yep. We set aside $33,000 last year for this year's E-rate budget, and so with the $14,000, we're not even hitting half of that so far. And we have some other plans this year as far as some equipment, and we're looking into rewiring some of the buildings too, because we've got some old Cat 5 cable in the building that needs to be replaced.
So you mentioned 51 batteries. This covers 51 batteries?
Yeah, this covers 51 UPSs, and roughly 6 of our network switches plug into one UPS. So think of a UPS as, it's about the size of a pizza box, but it weighs 50 pounds. And just think of it as like the most high-end power strip you'll ever see. So, yeah.
No wonder you're excited.
Oh, yeah. Very
These
much.
are rack mounted?
Yes. Dual post rack mount.
Any other questions? Discussion? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve district-wide upgrade for the UPSs.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Passes 3-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Kason. Do you want them to say which option? Can you redo
Oh, yeah.
the motion so that we can recognize the option? I'm sorry.
Which, it was for the,
Vol-
Lithium.
for the lithium
Lithium.
option?
Yep, the Volta's
Volta.
lithium-ion option.
Volta lithium ion option.
Yeah.
Got it. You got it?
Do you need us to?
We got it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Mr.
catching
Point.
that.
Number 8, consider approval of contract for strategic planning and implementation. Dr. McComas.
Okay, so the contract was in your packet, but I did bring some extra, it should be under your board report, your superintendent's board report. So this goes along with the goal setting. It's right up there, sir. I've got an extra, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that one's yours.
Oh.
Sorry, yeah. So one of the things, when I went around, when I first started, going and doing like listening sessions and working with principals when they had staff meetings and just trying to observe and see what the culture looks like. And one thing that really resonated with me, and I believe it was at RDC, they had a leadership event going on for their staff. Several teachers were having conversations at their tables around, we operate as a system of schools, and we don't operate as a school system. And so that really connected with me, and this group that I've been working with, it's called the Studer Group. They do strategic planning, so it's not giving you like a canned, bells and whistles. It's really a group that comes in and helps coordinate good, honest, true strategic planning. And so this would involve stakeholders from the community, from parents, from students, staff. It would be surveys that would go out, really trying to help us align what I think our big rocks are that I've identified with really what the community and our students and our parents, what our board, what our leadership, what our teachers think that our big rocks should be. So it's going to help us with that goal development that we want to refine. And it's going to take us through so there's an article here that you can read later, but I really love that because it was one of the first things that I heard when I got here, that we don't operate as a system of schools, but we want to operate as a school system. But basically, it keeps the plan simple and alive, so it's like a living, working document that's going to constantly get reevaluated. We're going to, it's going to be a living tool that we're going to use after this is developed. And then we would continue partnering with them to make sure that they're holding us accountable, that we're holding ourselves accountable to the process, because you don't want to spend this money on something and then, okay, we'll put that on a shelf too. And it's just going to help us coordinate the efforts that we're making, and also the slapping you in the face a little bit sometimes with we thought that was great and we're really not getting any results out of it. It's a feel-good thing that we're doing, but this program in itself isn't really giving us the impact that we want. So it's going to help us drill down and identify the things that we need to honestly look at to determine what we need to continue with, what we need to revamp, what we might need to, put to the side. Then it goes into that involving those stakeholders. And again, that can be listening sessions, that can be surveys, and it's anything from students to staff, leadership, board members, parents, and then bigger stakeholders like our ministerial association, our workforce investment board, all of those people that invest in us and expect us to deliver high quality services so that our students can graduate being successful and employable. Then it's going to take us and help us to develop a clear outline of responsibilities and accountability. So that's kind of like taking the ownership all the way through the progression of creating ownership, to building ownership, to monitoring ownership, to evaluating ownership, and then to actually extending that ownership for what we want to see for Clark County schools. It's going to help us review our own performance, and not just at the district level, but at school levels and even down to department levels. And then we'll be able to assess our own capability and capacity. So those goals that we want to set, we want to make sure that we're ready for them. So it's going to be a longer plan that we'll end up developing. There may be things that we want, but we're not ready for right now because we don't have the capacity or the capability for our school system to do that right this second. So it might be something that gets pushed to a 2-year or a 3-year side of the plan. And then we actually end up cascading those goals. So that's where you start extending that ownership. You want departments to own the work. You want those goals to be reflective in our full organization. And I've just been really impressed with this group, and they don't just serve schools in Kentucky. They actually are a nationwide program. There's schools in, I believe it was Denver, Colorado, that was one of the lowest performing schools. It's kind of like once you start monitoring something, that's when you start getting results. You've got to just make sure that you're doing the process. Dr. Parrish and I had looked at KEDC. They had a free model of the same type of strategic planning process. Unfortunately, and I don't want to discredit them, but I didn't feel like they were going to they would help us make a plan on how to do strategic planning, but I did not feel like it's going to deliver on sticking through the full strategic planning process. So the information that you have in your packet is that proposal. And what I like about the proposal is it's also like they're serving at our pleasure. So if we go through 3 months and I don't feel like this is really the high quality service that I believe we're going to get, then we're able to in that part ways. And what they have said is like usually some districts that were in like say their second year and they were really ahead of the game, they were able to go to a consultant base, and so they wouldn't continue with the thing, but they were still there to reach out to them. And I'm actually doing one of their other trainings next week, so I've got 2 full days with them so that we can start launching this to a bigger audience with our building leadership and our base team and with our board. So it's to really get us grounded in a strategic planning model so that we're not, having a lot of plate spinning, and we just want to make sure that we have our direction going.
So where's the proposal
I was going to
at?
say, am I missing it?
Yeah, I'm
I don't
missing it
see
too.
Miss Nance?
It's in the private board member folder.
Oh, it's in the
Okay.
private one.
Okay.
Yeah.
February 22nd, and then you see the proposal says support documents.
I'm in that one. There's just so many under the February 22nd.
Go into the folder under the 22nd.
Under the tentative?
I'm in that one, but it's, because they're not numbered.
Oh, wait, yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
They are.
There it is,
Oh.
the support document folder, right
So,
there.
there we go.
There you
There it is, number
go.
8.
Number 8.
Thanks, Bill.
No problem. It took me a minute too.
And that's the folder that we had to create out of last time. There's certain documents that companies don't want revealed
Yes.
to the public unless they're through open records request. And that is also being funded out of our ESSER account, just to make sure you're aware of that too.
Any questions?
Yeah, oh, well,
Okay.
I need a second.
Okay.
If that's okay.
And so is this going to be like in person or?
Some of them can be in person, some of them are going to be surveys, and then they pull those back in and run analytics on them so that we can develop, it's almost like a metric so that we can gauge ourselves against. And so most of those are going to be through the surveys, but we can have listening sessions. It's really at our discretion of how we want to start our strategic planning process. And I plan to get started in the next couple of weeks if this is approved, and then we'll have a final product plan established for the rollout of August when school starts.
So they help you put those surveys together?
Yeah. And they have like norm reference, like they know how to, the types of language, like I feel like I can develop a really good survey, and I feel like we can find free things to use just like with this plan. But how they answer one thing almost then dictates how that next survey needs to be developed. Instead of doing things independent of one another, they really look, the way their surveys are developed is that they are dependent upon the previous survey.
Right. But what I'm saying is, they're going to coach you, and it says virtual or on-site up to 8 days. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That they would, between now and August?
Between now and August, and we'll actually do a lot of the front-loading work between now and the end of school so that we can have those sessions, so that we can get the surveys out, make sure that, people are, summertime's great, but also summertime's busy, and so we want to make sure that folks stay engaged in the work. And then during the summer months is when we will actually be taking and synthesizing that information, putting it together to actually develop our anchors, how we're going to, look at our analytics, and then what we're going to use to develop the plan.
Okay. So when it says that it's an annual fee, is that going to be reoccurring?
Yes. As long as we want to, like, some schools do this one to get the strategic plan going, and then they develop their own internal procedures for it. And that's where I said some schools think that they're going to go for 3 years, and they stop at 2 because they end up developing a good process after they've had that training and coaching for the first year. And then like Warren County and some other districts, they intended to start with 3, and they're in year like 6 and getting some dynamic results with the strategic planning process that this company brings to them. And it's around continuous improvement models.
Right.
Is what they're
So
looking at.
after ESSER is over, how would you fund it?
This would come out of general fund
Okay.
after ESSER's over, but we do have 2 more years of that. So Ms.
Right.
Ellis and I have looked at that, and I feel like that's going to definitely get us through the piece where we know what the direction of Clark County Schools is going to look like. And then we can reevaluate if that's something that we want to continue because it's, proof that we've gotten more bang for our buck with the model than without building the capacity, within internal structures to be able to continue that.
Does it state in here that price is the same each year? It just says annual. I mean, is that,
I asked him that because a lot of places will do like a 5%. He said if you're a new client, that's when the price changes, but when you sign up, then you're having, you're really getting set into a price unless there was something like astronomical. But again, if that changes, then, you're not bound to a contract every year. I would bring it back and we would make a decision each year if we want to continue with this service.
it does say the term of the engagement is from March 1st to 2022 to 2025.
Because you set up usually for a 3-year strategic plan. But
Okay.
again, if I start this and I'm not satisfied with
You can,
in a month,
you're not held
yeah.
to that?
It looks like termination upon 30 days written notice.
Okay.
The only thing I see that I would recommend we negotiate is it's subject to arbitration under Illinois law. Usually, most companies will.
And, we did the
negotiate
same thing with,
Yeah.
so I'll make an amendment for Kentucky law.
that.
Yeah.
And then see if they'll start the arbitration clause.
Any other questions?
I'll make the motion to approve the contract for strategic planning and implementation.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
I'm excited.
Talks the batteries, doesn't it? All right, number 9, approval of pay application number 1525-06 to Ross Torrent Architects for the Clark County New Early Childhood Center Preschool Construction Project, BG 21-247, in the amount of $23,470.02. Mr. Snow.
And we did verify that on the BGs, the language is the Early Childhood Center. So
Okay.
that all of that was reflecting that. That was one of the things that you brought up last time, so we made sure that that was corrected.
Good.
Okay, this is, I'm sorry, for pay app?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time hearing back there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so, seems like forever since I've seen you. Yes, but there was one, I missed last month because I was ill, but there's one good thing, you probably saved a lot of money last month. Not coming in front of you. But along those lines, I'm asking you to pay Ross Torrent their January pay application for the preschool project. They completed their schematic design, and now they've entered into the phase of design documents, and they're billing you for the work that they've achieved last month.
Make a
Any-
motion to,
Oh,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That, I was just going to ask any questions or discussion.
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve item 9 as written.
I'll
Go
second.
ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Oh,
You stay up
put.
Staying up for a while.
Number 10, consider approval of the chiller system repair at George Rogers Clark High School for an amount not to exceed $40,000. Mr.
Okay, we
Stubbs.
have a supplementary cooling system at George Rogers Clark High School that supplements our cooling with our chill beam system for the geofield at GRC. It's a rather large tower, that's why they call it a cooling tower, and it provides cool air to the school when it needs it on high demand times. The fan, which is 8 foot in diameter, and a gearbox, the gearbox is faulty, it's failing. So we're asking the board to get in front of that. We have about a month or so before demand is going to be pulled from that particular tower. So we have about a month to repair that, and if we don't repair that, then we won't be able to have supplementary cooling to that school, which is pretty urgent. It's a big school to cool. So we've generated a few quotes over the past month because we were made aware of this just shortly after last month's board meeting. And we had one quote for near $30,000 to replace it new. Since then, the company's been sold that gave us that quote. And we had one here more locally that said they could repair it or rebuild the gearbox in there, and if they could do that, we're in the ballpark of about $15,000. So we're asking the board to allow us approval for up to $40,000, and once we get into that job and we find that we can rebuild it, we're looking more like at 15. If we're not, we're looking anywhere between 28 to 35, 40 in that ballpark, but it really does need to be repaired.
So what are the life expectancies
I was
of
gonna
those
say, how old
gears?
is it?
Because that was 2014, so
Yeah,
we're
so,
at 7
yeah.
years old?
Yeah,
So I
well-
don't know, is that average, is that?
Well, we get a year warranty, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty much the commercial warranty on equipment like that. But, anything mechanical, like a cooling tower that has large mechanical systems, things can go down in a year or two, they can last 20, you just can't predict. So this one went down in 10. The next one might last longer, it may not. But anything that's large and mechanical and runs to the capacity that does on very, very hot days, it's really unpredictable, I can't tell you. It might last 20 this next time, it might last 5. I just can't say.
So what if they rebuild it? What kind of guarantee do you have then?
We'll get a year warranty for a rebuild. If we buy brand new, we'll get a year warranty for brand new gears. So, but I will certainly make a very educated decision regarding whether we should go with rebuild or new based on what we see once we get in there. We really don't know what's in there and what the extent of that damage. What I can say to you is it ranges anywhere between $15,000 and $40,000 for the fix.
So the same company that would come in to rebuild it could get in there and say, oh, we really don't recommend rebuilding, just replace, and they, at that point, could replace.
You understand perfectly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
That would be the case.
How did you know it was not functioning?
It's making a lot of noise and it's not running right. I could try to simulate that noise for you, but I don't know.
So
Useful that would be.
So, the rebuild, I mean, to replace it was $27,000 for the company,
Yeah.
for the company that put the bid in. So why are you asking for 40 instead
Well,
of say 30?
well, we don't know. I mean, different companies have different angles on products and equipment. What we have seen is that what we're ordering has a lot of variance. The vendors that they were going to use to get the parts quoted the parts at this rate. If we can't no longer get it from that same vendor, we want some leverage, because we can't wait months and spend cheaper on products. So, we have to get the parts back in about a month, and we have to pay a little bit more to get that. We have to do that. So we just want that leverage to not commit to a price that's months out, because we just don't, the market is so unstable at this point with these types of parts.
Well, you get the parts.
And we're hopeful. Can't promise, but we're certainly hopeful.
Good luck.
Along those lines, I'd like to mention something as well. When it comes to damaging parts such as cooling towers and large HVAC systems, there's an urgency to get them repaired. And last year, what the board chose to do was to commit $80,000 in an account for the superintendent to use at their discretion when it comes to emergent situations. And we didn't have to wait a month to come to you to ask for money to fix things on. I would ask for you to consider that again. I thought that was a pretty good practice, where we would fix something with that money that the superintendent had discretion over, and then we would come the following month to you and say, we did this with this money. That really eliminated the wait and the urgency for things like HVAC systems, and I think it's going to allow us in this climate to get better pricing on equipment if we can do it more urgently.
Good idea.
And we can finalize that discussion when we have our next budget meeting with Felicia. If that's something that we want to consider putting back in there.
Mechanical stuff breaks, guys. And,
Yeah, and there's always, you can always call an emergency meeting too. when
That's true.
something breaks. So
That's right.
I do like the idea of the bucket of emergency funds, but worst comes to worst, you could always call an emergency meeting.
And of course,
Right.
good communication, making sure you're all aware of what we're getting ready to deal with
Yep.
before we're, paying and dealing with something.
And I wish I could come to you as Justin just did and say, I'm not asking for general fund money, but I am.
Well, this will come out of contingency, correct?
Yeah, I'm not.
That's what this is for, that's what contingency is for, it's when stuff like this happens.
Exactly.
We just don't want it to happen often.
No.
No, that's right. We would hope that it wouldn't.
Bad thing.
Any other questions, discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item 10 is written not to exceed 40,000.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Oh, he's staying, okay. Number 11, consider.
He'll be up here for a little bit.
Yeah, I see that. Consider approval of pay application number 1103916 to S&ME Incorporated for the Clark County New Early Childhood Center Preschool New Construction Project, BG 21-274, in the amount of $19,924.38.
This is for the geotechnical survey that's happening out behind Strode right now for our new early childhood center. This company has completed their dye testing, getting an idea how water flows through those sinkholes and those gaps and those crevices throughout that property. We're getting ready to start drilling here any day now. I know they're getting ready to mobilize the equipment out there. So this pay app is for the portion associated with the preliminary work up to this point, which will be your survey work and your dye testing and things of that nature. Then the rest of the application will be submitted probably next month when they complete the drilling and submit to you the report.
Any issues have come up? Has there been?
Now, at this point, we're still waiting on the dye testing, the report to come back and seeing how that water's flowing, but I haven't heard any results from that, but you guys will be the first to know when we find out.
And we've been keeping Mr. and Mr. Norton abreast weekly, so that's going well every time there's a change or a transition with the contractors or the drilling or anything like that, making sure they're aware so that
that they know what to look forward to.
I make a motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. All right, number 12, which was 13. Consider approval of contractual agreement between the Clark County Board of Education and Shrout Tate Wilson Engineering for the mechanical and electrical engineering design for the Shear HVAC renovation project BG 22-226.
Just to refresh your memory, we did request of KDE permission to engage in a renovation HVAC project at Shear under an emergent condition, and they approved that BG1. We came to the board and had asked you to approve the BG1 for $1.2 million. We are now asking your permission to engage in contractual agreement with Shrout Tate Wilson, who's done a lot of work for us at our high school and other construction projects throughout the district as the entity that would design the mechanical, electrical drawings for bid and for construction, so that we can put that out for construction, and that would fall under your architectural line item for the BG1 in the amount listed at this point. And I'll say that any company that would assume these responsibilities for a district is governed by KDE for a certain percentage of the total construction of the project. So it's 6.6% is what they can charge based on the total construction of your project. Then they get an additional 1.25 multiplier on top of that because it's renovation, not new construction. So it comes to about 8.25% of your total construction project. Now, what they're basing their fee on is the total construction project totaling $1.7 million. And that would include a cooling tower at Shear, just like what I just talked to you about earlier for GRC, because the engineers are suspect, they don't know for sure at this point, but they're suspect that that geothermal field at Shear may need supplemental cooling capacity given the size of the school and the conditions of the geothermal well in that location. So what the engineers would like to do is go ahead and design and bid that as an alternate, so the board can see what it would cost to add a cooling tower on that, and they're estimating the total cost, if you were to include that cooling tower, to be $1.7 million. So that fee is based on that. If you decide not to add a cooling tower based on what they find and what they design, then their fee would be revised to reflect at $1.3 million is what they're estimating the total cost of that project being without the cooling tower. So at this point, we're asking for your approval to engage in contractual agreement with Shrout Tate Wilson to do that work so that we can expedite that work and get it done quickly. KDE allows us to act this quickly because they have deemed it as an emergent situation, and we have to act quickly with it.
Any questions or discussion? I'll make a motion to approve the contractual agreement between the Clark County Board of Education and Shrout Tate Wilson Engineering. I need to state to include the cooling tower.
Well, we'll come back to you. We'd like to
Okay.
bid that as an alternate, and then you
Okay.
could at that point make the decision of whether you'd like to have that or not.
Okay.
But they're going to include that in their design.
Go ahead.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. All right. Let's see this.
Thank you.
Consider approval of the revised BG1 for the Shear HVAC renovation project BG 22-226. Mr. Stone.
Okay, I just gave you a copy of our proposed revision that would go to KDE. And it reflects the $146,828 that would be the contractual agreement that you just approved with Shrout Tate Wilson. That would fall on the line item and reduce the total construction cost at the top to $1,853,172. So you'll notice at the end of the BG1, the total amount's still the same, $2.1 million. The We're just adding into that 2.1 million the fees reflected on the Schrock-Tate contract that you just approved. So we'd like for you to approve this revised BG1 so we can send it to KD for approval. And on your motion, I would ask that you include at the end of your motion contingent upon KD approval or pending KD approval, something like that.
Any questions or discussion?
Contingent is good.
Contingent, okay.
Make a motion to approve the revised BG1 for the Shear HVAC renovation project BG 22-226 pending KDE approval.
I'll second. All those in favor?
We're
Aye.
going to use the word
Contingent.
contingent instead of
Contingent.
pending.
Contingent.
Contingent.
Yeah, thank you, sorry. Who was the second on that?
I was.
apologize.
Yep,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
All those in favor, we said aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. All right, number 14, consider approval of the proposed contractual agreement between the Clark County Board of Education and Toshiba Business Solutions for addressing the copier solution needs of the district.
Okay, 5 years ago, at the end of this month, I stood in front of our board and quoted to the board bids on our copying machine services throughout the entire district. At that time, I'll just kind of remind this board that at that time, prior to 5 years ago, we were sparsely engaged in contracts across the district with different vendors. We had Xerox and Brico and Toshiba. One of our strategies at that time was to consolidate all of our copying services because we knew at that time if we did so, it would really improve our ability to bid collectively across the district with one vendor. We did that 5 years ago, and Toshiba was awarded the contract by the board at that time. I've included in your packet the proposal that was approved by our board 5 years ago, which reflects a total monthly cost, lease cost across our district for 38 machines in all of our schools and our central office and other board offices for a monthly lease fee of $10,780. At that time, we were also quoted click costs per copy that we copied, black and white versus color. And at that time, which was a very attractive rate, we were quoted 0.0029 cents per black and white copy and 0.029 cents for every color copy. And those fees were paid by our schools. The Board of Education, our Board of Education, you paid for the leases for the schools. You paid the $10,780 per month. The schools paid however many clicks they had that paid for essentially their service contracts for the company to come out and service their machines in their schools. Okay, that was the pretty much the contingency of our previous agreement. Now Toshiba has come back based on the NASPO cooperative agreement. This NASPO it stands for National Association of State Procurements. It's the largest procurement agency or organization in the country. Allows Toshiba, which was the low bid in this organizational process, they were the low bid, allows them to offer to us a contractual agreement through NASPO without bidding it out. Okay, so we entertained a proposal from Toshiba to say, okay, if we didn't bid this out, what would you offer us? That includes the second packet that you have, which basically proposes the same number of machines in the district, 38, replacing all of those machines with brand-new machines that are higher capacity, faster, more higher quality machines. But it's still 38 machines, but I'll note that we're reducing one at central office. We proposed to add one at Campbell because of their capacity, to add a black and white at Strode, and we're reducing one that was in the mobile unit behind Phoenix. So when you reduce two and you add two, you're still at 38, okay? So replacing all of those 38 machines in our district, brand new, upgrading the software for PaperCut, which we own, we purchased 5 years ago, which allows principals to regulate how many copies anybody with a badge can have at the machine, paper cut, it just regulates the usage. To upgrade all that software across the district, to upgrade all of our badge readers on all of the machines for staff to swipe badges to access the machines, and to cover the costs and labor associated with every networked printer in our district.
And that's a huge piece for us. That right there is.
Right, for every network print, we have a bunch. Everyone that's networked, everyone that we add after the contract, if you would approve that tonight, anyone we would add additional to that, anyone, we could delete anytime, it would be for the same rate. They would come in, they would service the toners, the damaged parts, fix it, and if they couldn't fix it, they would replace them with new machines for a monthly fee of $6,845, which is a saving of $3,935 per month, or $47,220 per year on your lease. Right? And keep your click rates the same, your black and white color click rates the same. But when they assessed our schools, they said we were using much less copying in the district, and that we could expect our copying service agreements, which is the click rates, to reduce by another $500 per month, which the schools were paying. So that's the proposal. Now, you can either accept this proposal, or you can direct me to go back and rebid this out to different companies and get engaged in RFPs and do that gamut again.
And schools can also do it individually, but what traditionally happens is when you're small, you pay a lot more, and when we can keep our services together under Mr. Stump's direction, then we can get a better contracted pricing.
Where does it state in the proposal that all of the systems will be replaced as new?
It's in the main proposal. That's, everyone will be replaced as new. That will be in our contract. There's a contract attached, is there not?
Yeah, the lease with maintenance agreement.
Yeah, all 38 machines will be replaced brand new.
That.
Okay.
And it may also be
Yeah,
in that folder,
We need to-
since it's like protected information.
Have they provided good service for you?
Yes, I mean, I base the quality of the service by the number of complaints I've had, and I haven't had a whole lot. I've had a few, and they've addressed them very professionally, I
And
think.
they contact us a lot too. Like when they haven't heard from us, I don't want to say they wear you out, but they do contact you a lot, which
Right.
is nice.
Yeah. And they went around preliminarily and met with every school and assessed their usage patterns by taking the numbers off their current machines and really assessed whether or not what they had was sufficient or whether they needed more. And that's reflected in this proposal as well. New Campbell needed more, Strode needed more.
So is that contract for a year?
5 years.
It's for 5 years.
Good question.
And the
60.
price stays where you're locked in for 5 years?
For 5 years, that's correct. And that could be a good thing.
Could be a good thing.
Yeah, there's the agreement, the lease agreement, and then there's the lease with maintenance. Is it under the lease with maintenance agreement, the question Mr. Colby had?
I would have to look.
On making sure that they're all networked together?
Yeah, that is the, gosh, he had that broke down, I'm not seeing it right. But he had it broke down at the district level, it was
It's for
490.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of correct.
But when I had I didn't see it numbered. I just found it.
Oh, I found it.
But
But it
under the
says
systems,
payment
it
schedule
says,
$5,590.
now includes managed print services on an owned laser desktop, network printers, parts, labor, toner, maintenance, and services for those in the district under the price section.
Contract shows $5,590.
Yeah, but that's not including the cost for the network printers or adding.
Oh, okay.
There's three different prices actually that constitute the $6,845. There's three sections. That's your-
Oh, I see it. Okay, got another one, $852.
Right, and that's monthly.
Yeah.
That, all three added together gets you to the
$400.
$6,845.
I always saw the first one.
Okay.
There's, yeah, that I think it's a heck of a deal.
Any questions or discussion? You need another minute? No?
I'm good.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed contractual agreement between CCPS and Toshiba Business Solutions.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Stein.
Thank you.
Number 15, consider approval of the 2022-2023 tentative SBDM allocations. Ms. Ellis.
Good evening.
I'm Alicia Ellis, your Director of Finance, and you have very large sheets of paper in front of you. So this is the document that we provided each of the schools and kind of their working document to work with their counselors on their staff. You were also provided kind of a just quick overview of the changes or the highlights between last fiscal year and this fiscal year. By location. So I did district and then each location. Then you have the very detailed sheets in front of you. Are there any questions after reviewing anything? Do you want me to go into any explanation on anything specific?
So the 2022, 5,233 enrollment.
Yes.
Is that actual, or is that?
So that was a projection for last year, when we looked at rolling all the grades up of what we had enrolled at that time, and you roll those grade levels forward and you kind of projected the different grades. Ms. Bush and I worked on that last year at that time, and that was our enrollment at that time. This past year, with everything that has gone on, we have seen a very large dip in enrollment. We rolled all the grades forward again and projected what we think, based on rolling those grades forward, what enrollment will be next year, and it is down to 511.
What is our actual right now? What's our actual enrollment right now?
I have that.
I say I don't have that number.
Yeah, our actual enrollment right now is 5,164, and that includes our virtual students, which actually is down to like 30.
20, I thought it was like 28.
Yeah, it's like 31 students total.
But that's included in the 5164.
That's included in the number because they're still enrolled in
Right.
Clark County schools.
So that's when you're seeing your senior class leaving us. It's very hard to predict your kindergarten class coming in. That's really a projection estimate, because we really have no idea what our kindergarten class is going to be.
Yeah, and Ms. Bush is actually starting our kindergarten enrollment a little early so that we can actually have more accurate numbers coming in. And if we are able to change and increase those kindergarten teachers at the elementary level, which then would impact possibly a kindergarten assistant, then we'll do so by the time the final allocation comes out.
Can you walk us through how you come up with a 511 deficit? Or I don't want to call it deficit, but the difference.
So we literally took the enrollment as of a certain date and rolled them into the next grade level. So like kindergarten, we rolled into first grade. First grade, we rolled into second grade. So we rolled all the grades up. So senior level goes away. And then you roll all your grades up, and then you're kind of just projecting kindergarten at that point. So we kind of did an average on our kindergarten grade. And that's how the numbers fell out from rolling all of those grades forward of where we stood at that time with enrollment.
Do you have an account where a lot of them or some of them, have they moved? Have they?
Most of them have, chosen private school. Some are going to, you see increase in homeschool numbers. Some have moved to different, communities. A lot of it comes down to families wanting their kids to be in person. And maybe we weren't as vigilant at being in person last year as other communities. Some was really scared and terrified of what the experience through the pandemic was going to look like for public schools, and they chose to either homeschool or do private school. Some didn't want to send their kids to school because of the masking and no masking. You know, they were back and forth. We had a lot of students that unenrolled when we would not go to masking recommended earlier when some other districts did. So the 511 is just I hate to say a pot, but it's a pot of families just undecided on what this year was going to look like. So I do hope, and as we promote and become stronger partners with our community, they're going to want to come back. We're going to be marketed as a great place to be, and those students are going to want to come back for our experiences in the classroom and with athletics and extracurricular. Fourth grade is the grade that has the lowest enrollment right now, so Baker's going to get impacted the most because they're rolling up about 124 less students than they would have originally predicted. RDC's rolling up less students, yet GRC's rolling up more students. And they're all based on that same ratio that we're currently using for our staffing allocation.
But if you look at last year's projected, which was 5,233, and we currently have 5,164 in building as of today or last week or whatever. That's only 69 off.
These numbers from the previous year, which has been part of the reason why our staffing allocation doesn't match the true reflection of what our staffing allocation could be, is the numbers before were based on like a 5-year average.
But that's close. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Your projected last year is only 69 off of what we currently have enrolled. And then to say we're going to lose 511, I'm not finding it.
Yeah, that's rolling up the numbers from the previous grade to this grade, and we don't have this. And I think fourth grade's down 124 from what the projected enrollment was for fifth grade.
But if you take that fourth grade and just roll it in, we have senior classes graduating, and we have, what, I guess the preschool going to kindergarten?
Yeah, and not all of those
Yeah,
necessarily,
not all of
but.
those. So I don't see where the 511 difference is, because, you got the senior class leaving. It's almost like senior class is leaving and everything else is staying stagnant. And actually, what's the senior class? You might know.
What
Mr.
is
Harris.
senior?
Is
It should be in
three
enrollment.
something?
Yeah, usually
Yeah,
3.
close to 400.
3,
Close to
yeah.
Around there.
What is it?
I think close to 400.
It's close to
Typically.
400,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, I don't
I don't
have
know
the
the
grade
exact
level
number.
breakdowns, I just have our totals.
So we're saying we're gonna graduate, just say 400, just to
Yeah.
make it simple. We're gonna graduate 400, and we're not gonna bring any more kids in our district. Actually, we're gonna lose another 111. That's what this is saying.
Yeah. But you're gonna bring in an incoming kindergarten class, probably 350. I mean, if you just look at 5-year data trend, and I used to do that a lot, you can kind of see an ebb and flow, and you'll see like a really low fourth grade, but then you'll see, it'll back up to
Second grade.
a second grade that's
Right.
at 420,
Right.
I'm struggling with, because we were only 69 off your projected last year, which is pretty good if you think about it.
All right, I'm double checking to make sure I've not done a typo, so I'm trying to pull up the FY22. Give me just a moment.
I mean, do you see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Well, and while the
Absolutely.
projected enrollment, we are gonna have to go back and look at that, because now got
We
some more
are
questions.
projected, so when we presented you the FY22, we did project 5233.
Right. And right now, you've got 5164 in the buildings.
Looking at our enrollment numbers that we did, and we rolled up the grade levels, they're adding up to the 4722 when you're taking straight kindergarten and rolling all the grades up.
And you're not counting what's going to come to kindergarten.
Right.
You're saying that there's going to be 0 kindergartners next year.
Well, we did an average of kindergarten because we really have no idea what kindergarten.
Because
would be.
What is the average?
313 total for all 4 schools. And we were, well, actually, we did the enrollment number this year. The average is actually 351. We went more conservative with the 313. So we have 313 enrolled right now in kindergarten based on,
And you have that number in?
that's the number we projected for kindergarten again, just saying, it stays
Right.
exactly the same because we really have, and then we've rolled up each grade level after that.
So if you have 400, again, I'm just using.
I think
We have 400
went on
graduates.
You can go ahead. Sorry. I went into Infinite Campus to check. I think, pretty sure we have 356 seniors. So
I'm still gonna use 400
close to
as an
400.
example.
Yeah.
Just to be
Just easier. So if we have 400 graduating, just, say, and we got 313 coming in, then, that's what is that, 87 difference. Delta 87, not 511. That's what, am I wrong?
Yeah.
That's
No,
kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay, so this is based on projections of last year, not current enrollment of FY '22.
I know,
So
but your
if you're looking
projection was
at-
pretty daggone close. You were only 69 over. So when you project 4,722, I'm like, where are we losing 511? I mean, we're only going to lose 356 seniors. It just doesn't,
Mathematically.
it doesn't mathematically settle with me, I think.
Well, and I don't want to say
Even with
don't
a
get.
small, for a fourth grade, I don't
Yeah.
know how many's in fourth grade. You said there's only 126?
No, there's
No, they're
124 less
Okay.
than what they would have anticipated going into the 5th grade. But if we can kind of get past that number, which is important, but that number can impact what our final tentative allocation will be, because all of them are now based on a ratio. So before, like the high school did a double divisor. They were looking at the per pupil hours, plus they were looking at a ratio of that 31, then you have a 29, and then you have like a 24 teacher to student divisor.
Right.
So the divisor, it's going to go up. Your teaching allocation will go up depending on if that number truly does change based on their enrollment.
Right, because
And
right now you would have to lose 21 teachers if
Yeah.
you lost 511 kids.
In addition-
Based on a 24
Yeah.
cap size.
And you have 31 at the high school, which we're using a 24 divisors. Most districts conservatively are using anywhere from a 25 to a 27,
Sure.
and that includes everything.
Everybody.
Like they're not getting any add-ons or any additional staff like we, traditionally have done. So what the ratio is going to do is kind of tell us that. So we're going to have to go back and look at what's going on with our projected numbers versus the 5-year average to make sure that we don't have this gap. But I'm focusing on the 24 and then how we're allocating the positions, those required positions like the library media specialist, your principal position. So those aren't going to change, but will change, and we'll be able to get that back out before this meeting, before next week.
Yeah.
So that we have more accurate information for the site-based councils, because that's what they're interested in looking at too. But it does hinge on that number, but the formula is going to be applied to that number.
Right.
So if we can we shift our conversation to the formula? If that's okay?
I still
Yeah, but
think you're
that
looking at
number-
cutting 21 teachers. When you lose 511 kids, I mean, that is like major red flags, people. We've got problems. We've never lost that many students. And I've been doing this since 1987
That's
for a
almost
district.
10%.
Yeah, so we'll have to go
That
back
is 10%.
and find out what
I mean, it's
is
a
going
lot.
on with our projections. But whatever happens,
Right.
whether we stay the same, lose a little, lose that much, or we gain, we're gonna be out using that staffing formula. And so that's gonna then adjust the number of teachers that schools are gonna have. And the sooner that we get those other enrollment numbers in, so she's also doing the open enrollment, all of those things for parents to come back, we're doing all of that earlier. So we're not waiting as long through the summer to find out what our true kindergarten enrollment is,
Right.
so we're kind of pushing a lot of that up so that we do have as accurate as number as possible. But at the, is the first one that you all have on the top, GRC?
Yes.
Yeah, so GRC, like one of the questions that somebody had asked earlier is like why theirs isn't as deep. as some of the others. Well, they were gaining more students. And so again, applying that straight formula. What we're trying to do is be more equitable across the entire district. And what had happened in the past is that some schools came and wanted more, and they had great programming to support those, and they got more staff. Some schools went through periods of those shifts in enrollment, and they did not get shifts in staffing. They maintained staffing. And so it's kind of like if you had 1 or 2 each year and you don't adjust based on your enrollment, then you end up with a situation that we're in where we have to adjust deeper cuts at some staff levels than we do on the others. And I hate to even use the word cut.
Right.
What we're trying to do is just get more equitable and aligned with our staffing formula, which we were not previously aligned to our true staffing formula. It would be, I want this program, and we have a very generous staffing formula for Clark County, and I love that, and I want to make sure that we protect that as much as possible. But we also need to make sure that we are following the staffing allocation so that we don't end up in a situation where we are overstaffed and then not able to sustain that. ESSER dollars have been able to come in and help us have that leverage and padding, but those ESSER dollars aren't going to be here forever. And so we really just want to make good estimates, which we're going to have to look at, but we want to make sure that we're using that staffing formula appropriately over the next 3 years. And making sure that those adjustments are being made with the staffing formula.
So you're just asking for us to approve a formula, not really?
No, you're approving tentative allocations
Okay.
as they stand. But again, these allocations aren't going to be finalized. So these are going to site-based councils next month. And so this number, based on the projections that we're going to get. So if I need to go back and make sure that this is going to, but if you're approving the tentative staffing formula, then I am going to have leverage to go in and adjust those numbers. Does that make sense? Because we're using the divisor. We're not doing all of these, somebody coming in and making requests and wanting more. We're sticking straight to the formula, which is, if you want me to run through that real quickly, like at the high school level, we are recommending, if you look at that first column, it says number of students that are enrolled, and then you look at the first column, it says KRS required. So the required staffing allocation for high school is 31 students per 1 teacher. Then you look at recommended, and so like you see 250 there. So it's a recommended of 250 students per social worker. It's not required, but that's kind of like the number you want to target. For every 250 kids, you want to make sure that there's extra mental health supports in that school. And then we have the Ccps ratio. So that's what we are proposing that we look at. So again, recommended around assistant principals for every 400 students, making sure that they have the support in the assistant principal role. So that's not like an additional staff member. They're currently already using that model. It was just never approved. Like they were using a site-based allocation to make sure that they had 4 assistant principals at the high school, which matches a 1,600, student body school.
So you're asking, instead of site-based to pay for the principal, you're asking the district to pay for that principal, assistant principal?
Yeah, yes, but site-based still has the final say. Like if we send this to them and they don't want to use 4 assistant principals, then they're going to say, no, I want that to turn back into a teacher, but they're always historically keeping it as an assistant principal. So I'm just trying to capture the true reflection of what's happening in Clark County, while at the same time we're respecting a formula. So that's where that number came from, though. And then that also supports that each elementary school that has enrollment around 400 is going to be able to maintain an assistant principal. And then if you look at the highlight, that is a divisor of 24 that we're using for the high school. And down here, you'll see the highlight that we are saying that is currently for this year, because next year, as we get more efficient with our staffing formula, we may want to adjust that to a 24.5 or a 25. So we're approving it as a 24. So then that's the number that is going to end up telling us the number of staff. So the required staff, based on a 31 divisor, is 52.1 if this student enrollment is accurate. But then we will be providing them with 12.2 additional staff because we're using a lower divisor. I'm over to the green if you look at just the certified teachers there. So they are being reduced 2.8 certified teachers
But if you look back up to that assistant principal, they historically are turning that teacher into an assistant principal.
Because really, they're all teacher positions.
Yes, yeah. And then over here in the shaded areas, the required versus the yellow and the green, that just kind of goes with the chart that's up at the top. And Miss Ellis, you're welcome to stop me whenever you want.
You're doing a great, fantastic job.
And then you can see the highlight that's over there in the center of what their changes are looking like. And then if you'll flip over to RDC, they're under the same model, recommended of 24 divisor for 7th and 8th graders. And so their required divisor is also a 31. So that shows you that they had, and I looked through some of the historical data that the gentleman that came in and prepared all of this, like there is
Dr. Bob?
Yes, there is always this excess of approval beyond the staffing formula that was captured into that. And so that's what this is kind of reflecting too. That green is like, if we're using a lower divisor, that green is still reflecting what those additional positions are. So the equity is that we're using the constant divisor for both of those schools. So based on your number, that shows you that some schools had more staff that was not necessarily as equitable as another school may have had, because you're using the same divisor now. So it's kind of like everything is getting leveled out.
I'm sorry, but I'm still struggling because when I look at, for me, staffing allocation, you have a formula, but you also are looking at your projected.
So let's circle back
And-
to enrollment, because
Yes.
we just looked at the 5164 number we just said includes preschool. I'm not including preschool in these numbers.
Oh, you can't.
Okay, so the
So what-
5233 is what we projected last year.
Yes.
We lost 506 students to homeschool last year, which puts you down to 4727.
And you have 613 in homeschool right now.
And and it's already gone up to 613 this year. So when you look at 4727 last year, if you take those homeschool kids off that 5233, you're going to 4727.
Okay.
We're now projecting 4722.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we're not off from where we're standing right now with how many kids we have in homeschool. That over the last 2 years, last year and this year, we've lost that many kids to homeschool.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is why the numbers are what they are.
But we did
So-
switch from a 5-year average to a real number that went forward. So there was more accurate data coming into that number.
So your 5233 included preschool?
No, the 5233 is prior to all these children that we've lost. I mean, it's
Right.
a combo of rolling your grades and an average historical number that how we used to
Right.
function
I
under
get that, but
our
what,
previous.
what is our actual enrollment today, K through 12?
K through 12 would be 5,164 minus 314.
Yes, that's what we
Okay.
say, which
So
is
take-
4849. So we're looking at 4849
Okay.
minus the 4722. I'm projecting with rolling the grades next year, so you're losing 127 kids when you're looking at enrollment right now. But
Okay.
these staffing allocations are comparing last year's to this year's of our staff that we have employed with us right now based on what we projected last year to now these numbers of how we're going to employ our staff coming next year based on these enrollment numbers. So we have to compare to what we projected last year, which is what this document does. But as far as current standings, if you remove preschool from the 5164 total enrollment where we're at right now, we're at 4849.
And we're unfortunately at 613 on homeschool numbers.
So does that help bring it,
Yes.
the gap closer?
That does
we're
bring the
not-
gap closer.
The 511 is not as large as it seems because of to current enrollment right now.
And we really do hope with good marketing, strong programs,
Right.
masking is hopefully becoming more and more in our rearview mirror, and that we're able to have choice and be able to move about, and that kids and parents want their kids back in, into a social setting.
Right.
And not at home or in small co-ops, that number is going to go up. And the faster that we're able to onboard our enrollment process,
with the open registrations. Hopefully we'll have those numbers more readily and quicker, that we can make adjustments to this. And I'll be in constant communication with you and principals, but right now, the reality is those projections that we're, that we're coming
Okay,
up.
I've got the 511. I'm good with
Okay.
that.
Okay.
GRC predicting losing 115 students, but only losing one teacher.
Now, they have JROTC and 2 ATC teachers that are still included into theirs. So they technically, like, that was on a separate part of the allocation last year, and I wanted that to be reflected onto the GRC side. So like you have the grant funding with half, basically you get half of Colonel Krupp and you get half of Master Sergeant Lee's salary from the grant. And then we also are putting forth 2, Ms. Ellis, 2 positions for ATC. So those are 4 positions that are reflected on here that they would have lost in another area. So we're just putting everything parked in one spot.
I think I understand that, but go
Well,
ahead.
yeah.
I don't want to get too in the weeds.
Yeah.
It's just that when I look at the 511, I know you have to lose 21 teachers.
So, well,
And so I'm trying to figure
Yeah.
out where are the 21 going to come from?
so
If-
technically, the line, they're getting extra teachers because we're still allowing them to keep some of the staff under the CARES Act funding. So we're
Right.
weeding down the CARES Act funding, of where we have 19 positions, and we're trying to do a third each year to get some of the staff off of that. So part of when you're looking at this, the certified teacher line on GRC, like if you take their 1614 divided by their 31, they should get the 52.1. That's what we have
Right.
have to do.
Yes,
So
that's
we're
required.
doing the 24 ratio. That gives them an additional 12.2 to get
Okay.
them to 62.3 teachers. Okay? They are, well, it's actually 65, but they're choosing to use 2 as social workers. So that's kind of up there in that mental health piece. We're trying to account for that to show you that based on how they're choosing to use their allocation, they're covering that mental health recommendation of 250 that we were speaking of earlier. And then they're still getting to keep 3 teachers on ESSER. Like they had 3 positions on ESSER they actually had 4 positions on ESSER last year, and we're giving them 3 still this year. So when you add all that together, they're really not losing, even though they would have lost 3 based on the 115. You see the negative 2.8 out there to the side?
Yes.
So they would have lost 3 teachers based on, but helping, trying to not overwhelm the school of losing, and we've done that with each of the
Because
schools.
we do have 3 years to kind of walk through.
So instead of just
The model.
knee-jerk cutting it out at saying you're not gonna get these people, we're trying to, weed it down each year in a third with the grant, because we have the grant funds available.
Right.
So we don't wanna just wipe everything out right at the beginning and just say you can't have these staff because the enrollment went down so drastically.
And most of these are going to happen through attrition.
Yes.
People naturally leaving through retirements, so that we're not going in and making those drastic cuts all at once.
Right.
They also were more in line than some of the other schools may have been. Now, we did have some things that were being captured on district funds, so they weren't necessarily being reflected here. So that's why it may look like they're not losing.
Okay.
When they were, for example, on the social workers, like we even have that reflected accurately. So if you see, last year, they were funded for 2 guidance counselors, 2 school counselors. But they really have 5. They've always had 5. They have a main coordinator, and then they have the one per
Before.
grade level before. But that didn't reflect accurately last year. So we are just trying to make sure that while we're realigning and becoming congruent with our staffing allocation, that we're also making sure that we're reflecting accurately the information that you all need to consider. And then next year, you'll see that 2023 rollover. You'll see so that way we're always looking at what we saw last year to what we had for this year. And then drop down below that, it's 2 and 2, because the social workers, that's how they were using their social workers.
Right.
But then you'll see that we had 3 guidance counselors from the CARES Act,
Yes.
and this year they're losing 3. Well, they're losing 3 because they
them
were
up.
being paid not out of district funds, they
But
were
out of
being paid out of
ESSER.
ESSER.
But now they're going to go back into the general fund.
So some of that is shifting around to make sure that the dollars are properly aligned. And two things about the federal funding, just to make sure everybody's clear. When those staff get moved over, when they got moved over last year, they weren't necessarily moved over. It was just like, these are the things that we're looking at, and a decision was made which to move over a set allotment of staff. So when I came on board, Alicia and I sat down and we reviewed all of those staff members. Well, some of them were costing us more money on federal dollars.
Because of insurance.
Because of insurance. And so if I take Parent Plus for my children and I'm an arbitrary person that gets coded to, and it's you know, nothing to the employee. They get paid the full benefits,
Right.
all of that stuff. But I cost the federal grant more money. To the tune of probably $400, $400 for every 10,000 would be what you would end up costing that. So if you go through and you look at those, we ended up capturing more federal dollars because we identified all of the staff out of general fund that were waiving the insurance. Well, those are the folks that you want to flip over and pay out of the federal side. So that's another reason why some of these shifts were made, because then we could save more of our federal dollars by not paying the extra fee of insurance, because the state picks up your insurance. When you go to a federal employee side, state's saying you're federal.
The grant covers it.
The grant's gonna have to cover their costs. So that's part of the federal side of it.
Okay.
Okay, do we wanna go through?
Is that the reason, I mean, I guess it was last year, year before last, there was like 12 positions was gonna put on ESSER.
I thought it was 12.
Yeah, it was like 12. Now it's like 19.
Yeah, because we were able to do the same amount of money by moving over the staff, so you have more staff on there, but they're the same dollar for dollar as that 18 represented what 12 did.
Because
Right.
the
Yeah, but now
insurance.
you've
But
got more
now you've got more in ESSER that you've got to get
You gotta do
moved back
something.
over.
Right,
which
and you
is-
have flexibility for 3 years to do that. But at the time, the ESSER plan wasn't designed for anything other than staffing. That's what the code set for us.
Right.
So we just wanted to make sure that we have flexibility within our federal dollars. So by using that code where staffing was, well, if you're already had it budgeted for X number of millions of dollars, why not have the most staff over there and you're not covering the cost of their insurance because you're moving those other staff back? Then when we can have flexibility with realigning our federal ESSER budget, when we move those staff over, like it had already been earmarked for that, but we were absorbing money. We saved it on the general ed side.
Yeah, but now we have to address more positions though.
It's
No, you
always
have to
been
address
19
them anyway.
position, it was just 12 teachers.
Yeah.
It was
You had
teachers.
12 teachers, 3 IAs, and 3 guidance
Okay.
counselors.
But we
I
did,
just
Guidance
remember 12.
counselors,
yeah,
actually.
but we did shift staff around
We
to
did
make sure
shift
that we save money.
we shift people around to save dollars, but it's always been 19 people. I mean, that has not changed. It's
Okay.
always been 19 positions. It was 12 teachers, 3 IAs, and 4 guidance counselors.
Okay.
That's always been,
19.
How
the
much
staffing.
money did we save when we redid, just ballpark, with what you remember?
I think it was roughly 60,000-ish when I did the insurance switching.
That we were
So
able to
not-
save out of the federal
yeah.
side?
From taking high insurance people to low insurance.
But it wasn't necessarily a one for one. You're just trying to make sure that you're
Right.
paying your federal dollars to your people that waive insurance, so that you end up, have more flexibility with that money to use it for something else.
And may I add about natural attrition? We've started collecting the
Intent
intent
to
to
return?
return. We already have 13 that are either retiring or do not intend to return, so that will help with natural attrition, I think.
Is that 13 teachers?
Yes,
Certified?
those are
Okay.
certified teachers.
So of that 19, you see 13 through attrition.
And really, it's only 12, right?
It's 12.
12 are
Well,
certified.
12
Well,
teachers.
12 on the ESSER funds this year, but we're losing district-wide 19 from FY '22 to FY,
Yeah.
which is mixture of general fund and ESSER.
Right.
But, because we are choosing to leave some teachers on our ESSER funds, because we're
Walking them off.
walking them off of, instead of just putting them all back in general fund.
And that was done for a different purpose than schools also have budgets out of federal dollars and or like title money, all of that's the same. And they can choose to hire folks with that. And those people get hired though knowing that if this grant goes away, then this position could easily go away. So that's a different purpose than just moving staff over, because we were trying to make sure that the budget last year was in line with the staffing
cost.
What is the formula for GRC?
We're using that 24 ratio.
Okay.
And that's-
Per number of students?
Per number of
There's no,
students.
like, there used to be an added factor
Right.
or all of that?
You were doing a double
Okay.
divisor, and then sometimes they did another divisor.
Yeah.
And so this
So
is.
it's just flat 24?
It's just a flat 24. It's easy to figure. Again, other districts, some districts are higher, districts that don't have a lot of local money coming in, they're more of a 28 and a 29, or they're getting closer to that true 31. And we are doing the 24, knowing that next year may have to, go up to a 24.5 or a 25 or a 27. But I think if we just are mindful of our budget, we're good with our being stewards of our resources, so we're gonna able to keep a very nice staffing allocation that's gonna provide all of these extra things that Clark County's known for.
Is that 24 across the district?
Yes. It looked like it was.
Yeah, contract justice is
Yeah.
not listed.
And
in
that
contract
double
justice.
division
Oh,
factor
okay.
is also part of why you see the 115 enrollment down, but they're
Yeah. I see.
only losing one teacher.
Yeah.
It's the difference of that ratio factor.
I was looking at the
Contract
presentation, it didn't have 24.
Yeah, now
I'm
they
sure.
do, but theirs is in the required column.
Yeah.
So if you wanna flip over to,
yeah,
Baker,
okay.
RDC, and GRC, their divisor required is different than their divisor that we're proposing, the 24. And the reason for that is we maybe should have started with the elementary, because what do elementary schools also need besides their certified teachers? They need their rotations. So they want PE, they want to have music, they want to have
All right.
library. And so we in Clark County give those as additional positions. So technically, if we had a true divisor for elementary, it'd be less than 24 because we're giving them additional positions.
Right.
Another model we could look at is, okay, Baker's twice the size of all 4 of our elementary schools put together. Why not give them 6 additional positions for rotations? Because they run theirs more like an elementary type schedule. So that's one way that you could do it, because then it's kind of equitable. The other equitable way is you give them a lower divisor of a 24, because their divisor isn't necessarily at a 24. And then we make sure that they have the extra positions for their, what are they called? Electives, enrichment classes, however they run. But at the elementary level, you have requirements for 24 for kindergarten all the way up through 3rd grade, and you have 28 is your required divisor for 4th grade. So we're staying with the true divisors for elementary school, but then
Gotcha.
we're giving them the
The-
positions they need to make sure that their schedules can be run appropriately. And then they are also using that model of 400, knowing that they have historically used a teaching position to serve as a assistant principal. So we're making sure that that's embedded in here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get us
No,
off track.
that's okay.
Since we're jumping around a little bit,
Mhm.
can we talk about the formula for the LBD and FBD instructional assistants?
Yep.
On how that was determined?
Well, what the state requires is that with LBD students at or elementary levels, it's a 1 to 15 ratio for caseload for a teacher. And and that goes up through grade 6, correct? So I'm looking at Miss Mann. And then grade 7, 8 through high school, you have a caseload requirement up to 20. They can't go over 20. And at LBD, you are not required to have an assistant. So all the assistants that we have, there's 27, if they are going to be an LBD assistant, they should be connected to a child's IEP, individualized education plan, that was designed and coordinated through an ARC that was convened to meet the needs of the student. Out of those 27, Ms. Mann has vetted that, and there's only 2 assistants that are actually connected to
Tied.
an IEP that was developed in an official ARC. So all of these other assistants, while they are extremely valuable and in our classrooms, they are not required positions. And so again, what we are doing is we are creating a culture of, I need extra help, and we're giving it to them. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but we cannot keep spending like we're spending on resources for students and staff without really vetting that through the ARC and IEP process. And so that's what that comes down to. Now, FMD students, that caseload is 1 to 10,
and you have a required assistant for those classrooms. And so that's different because their needs, that could be a non-mobile student, a non-verbal student, a student on a feeding tube, all of those other more severe developmental delays that those children are experiencing that they need extra support for. And again, that's for the classroom. Some of those children could also have an independent service provider, an instructional assistant that's assigned to them. Maybe it's a transfer from a wheelchair to, a table or something of that sort. So there could be an additional resource there, again, connected to an IEP. So we just have had a very loose model of how we're assigning our instructional assistants through special ed. And so Ms. Mann and Mr. Powell have gone through and vetted all of those and made recommendations based on the caseloads. Our caseloads have also been very small. So if we have LBD teachers at elementary school and they can manage a caseload of 15, now do you want every special ed teacher to have 15? Some districts have no other choice but say you've got to have 15, you've got to have 15. 12, 13, that would be nice, but not all of our teachers are even at 12 and 13. They're more at 10 or 11 or 9. And so we have extra staff in our buildings not managing as many on a caseload as they could possibly have. And this is a really difficult conversation because I don't want to sound like I don't want resources in our schools. But I also have to make sure that I'm protecting our budget and making sound recommendations so that we are moving forward with a model that's sustainable. High school and middle school, that 20, you're going to see caseloads at most of our high schools. Was our average around 11? Half of what their caseload could be. And so it's just another situation where we are listening to the concerns, and we're trying to meet the concern with an additional staff member instead of looking at our structures, looking at our schedules, looking at the capacity of our staff, making sure that support is in place first, and then using the ARC as the mechanism to really make sure that students and staff are
The decisions.
are being met and vetted so that we can have we can stick to our formula and offer resources that really are vetted through that process. Because if not, it can get out of control pretty quickly. Does that answer your question
Yes,
about?
ma'am.
Okay. And those assistants are tied to that too. And the other place for required assistance is in kindergarten, just to make sure everybody's aware that kindergarten requires you to have an instructional assistant.
Any other questions or discussion?
I feel like we interrupted you, Alicia, I'm sorry.
Huh?
I said we interrupted you. You were-
No, that's part of what this is about, is the discussion and answering questions and.
What version of document is this?
It's probably number 5.
Yeah, we have gone back and forth with principals on not having things in 3 different places, trying to have everything captured, not just bigger and more visible, but making sure. Then they also have a staff list. So we had started the staffing allocation process with their staff list that Ms. Ellis coordinated, that make sure that they could go in. So our principal had to come in and sit down with myself and Dr. Livingood, and we went through, is this person in your building? Is this person in your building? Is this person in your building? And we found some that were assigned to their building, but they really were somewhere else. And so it also gave us an opportunity to make sure that every person is named and claimed in the appropriate building, so that this is as true as of a picture of what's going on in our schools as possible.
It's been about a 3-month process.
So, mentioned earlier that we still have personnel on ESSER funds after this year, but with these cuts, are there gonna be more cuts? And I hate to say cuts, but
yeah.
I mean, is there gonna be more cuts when we have to bring the staff from the ESSER back to general fund?
So next year, we're going from 19 this year to 12 next year. And then we'll cut off.
And then you
over,
have
but-
13 leaving or 12,
Yeah,
right?
so I mean,
Yeah.
so there's
So-
12 in this budget, there are still 12 on our ESSER funds. We've removed 7.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean those
Position.
folks are being let go, just
No,
to
no,
clarify.
it's just
We're
the
just walking
funding
them back to
source.
general
Yeah.
fund
It's
over
just
a
the funding
3-year
source is
period.
changing.
Instead of trying to find all that money in general fund in 1 year, we get 3 years to walk
Right.
them back through, and Dr. Parrish is also, again, with those letters of intent, like just really being diligent to make sure we get those. The other thing that that Clark County wasn't used to when I started, and they would have a position come open that they needed to repost, we wouldn't necessarily let them just repost it. So before they would send an email to Dr. Parrish and this position, this person resigned, I need to repost this. And so when we started realizing that we were gonna have some of these things that we had to get, again, more in line, it was principals had to vet the position. And what they found over, I would say out of 10, at least half of them have been vetted that, like, no, we don't need that position. We can redo our schedule and these people can absorb this. So some of it is happening naturally. So this isn't about like you're gonna see, 25 and 30 people get pink slips and walk out of the schools. This is all happening mainly through that attrition, people naturally leaving, retirements, those things. But I just wanted to clarify that when we said coming off of ESSER does not mean that they're getting pink slipped. It just means that we're slowly putting them back on general
Well,
funds.
you couldn't if they were tenured.
Right, so next year's 12, and then next year's 6.
Okay,
And then none.
okay.
So, we're stepping it down, but again, like she said, that doesn't mean that specific person is not coming
No.
back to us. It's just the
Yeah.
funding source
Yeah.
mechanism
Funding
of how
source.
we're
How far
funding our
along,
staff.
how far along are we with the letters of intent? Are we,
We've collected over 300 already.
Oh, okay.
okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
Staffing allocation night's
know.
always a terrible night.
It's
Always.
been a rough 3 months.
Sorry.
I can only
It
imagine.
always is. Because everybody's important. I would just want to go on the record to say that I really hate to talk about staff reductions coming with the gaps that the pandemic has caused. And I do worry about that. I do think that's what ESSER funding was for, was to level the playing field for that. So I hope it is being used, as I see we're gonna, do other, this year HVAC is ESSER, and, I do worry that sometimes we are forgetting what the gaps that have occurred that we don't know are gonna be in the next 2 or 3 years, so.
And we're also analyzing all of the schools. See, the schools have big pots too of their ESSER dollars. And so they are also analyzing, some of the principals are wanting to pull in other interventionists and those things. So Ms. Baumfield's actually working with them. One thing is, like, if a principal says, well, if I'm losing this, can I use my ESSER fund? And I say, you have the flexibility to do that.
But it's gonna go away.
But it's gonna go away, and we also wanna protect staff, and we wanna do so in building capacity within our building leadership. We wanna build capacity within our, when I say tier 1, like our general ed teacher, we wanna make sure that everyone feels like they are capable and supported to do the work that meets the students where they're at inside their classroom. And so a lot of times, we do fall into those models of where we push too many kids out to go to you and to you and, to somewhere else, instead of coordinating our schedules, that supports can come into the classroom to also better support not just the student, but that teacher. You have tandem teaching that can go on. You can have a lot of front loading that can happen before they get to the main station. And so there's some big changes that I think we all need to look at, but I feel like our principals are embracing that. I think our teachers are embracing it, and while it sounds like we're getting ready to shock a system, it's being absorbed
Okay.
already. And it is hard. It's been a hard couple of months with conversations with principals too.
I share Ms. Considine's concern with the pandemic, and we're just maybe starting to get over that hump and, trying to get back to a regular schedule, regular routine, and we don't know what those gaps are. We still don't know. and losing frontline personnel for the kids, it's hard to do that.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm also thinking about the budget side of it.
Sure.
And
Yeah, we'll have to.
my
Your math
Well, I think
background.
you're approaching it in
My
the
heart
right
is-
direction.
yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
For sure. Anything else? Anybody want to make a motion? I can make the motion to approve the 2022-2023 tentative SBDM allocations.
Can we have another, after a second,
Ye-
can we
yeah.
have a brief discussion, one more brief discussion?
Uh-huh.
after?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
So this is an estimate to site-based, this MBD. So when will the final numbers come to us?
The
May.
April board
May?
meeting.
May.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just
Isn't it
wanted to
May
make
1?
sure.
They have to have
They have
it.
to have them by May 1, so you'll see it at the April board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and site-based will have these, they'll be discussing these next month. The tentative ones, and then
Right.
we'll finalize them. And technically, they're not even finalized until September 15th, after we see.
After they-
Yeah.
Yeah, they
See
call
what
this
from
the
them.
tentative and final, but really your final is,
Yeah, you really have a tentative, maybe another tentative, and then you have a
Yeah.
final.
Well, the concern is,
Right.
possibly losing a staff member, teacher, instructional assistant, and then in September, oh my
Having
God,
to
we need
hire
them
back.
back, and
Yeah.
they're gone.
Yeah.
You know, we had a great person, and we
Yeah.
lost them because they went somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, will you all be reaching out to the homeschool students over
Dr.
the course?
Sorry,
Okay.
Mrs. Bush already is.
Okay,
Actually,
perfect.
she's gonna start expanding a campaign to reach out and invite them to things. Because we want them involved, we want them involved in our schools, and we want them to see what we've been able to accomplish and how we're getting back to our new normal that's hopefully new and improved. I think we've learned a lot from a pandemic too.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
gonna help us have better systems, better supports that we can't let go of, while at the same time parents' nerves are calming down and becoming more aware of what the community and schools can offer during that. And that I do think we're going to see a lot of those students come back, but it's left to the unknown until we see what our enrollment numbers look like.
Generally, we've always had about 400 in homeschool. I mean, just historically,
Yeah.
it's always been very high for this county.
For
I thought.
county. So 400 and we have 600,
Yes.
about.
So I think it's
13.
613.
Yeah, it's probably gone, the
Yeah.
pandemic caused it
Yeah.
to grow.
Sure.
If you can get 211 back, it'd be great.
It would be.
Cut your numbers.
I know.
There's your goal.
There's my goal.
There you go.
Do some more home visits next week.
Any other
Do it
discussion?
when the
Oh.
regional tournament's going on, because everybody wants to get involved in basketball.
Well, right. I mean, we
Trust
are
me.
a basketball state.
Okay, well, I know that was hard. I appreciate the difficult questions and the time that you all spent on making sure that we understand our staffing formula and that we're going to be aligned, we're going to stay aligned to that. And then we're going to vet positions.
Right.
So if
And it's not going to change.
It's not going to change.
So
But if
the
there are
principals will know it's going to be a flat 24, then
Yeah.
they can prepare to work
Best they
around that.
can.
Yeah. And if we have everything so aligned and our budget is really healthy, like I hope if we're doing these small steps that we are going to stay very healthy and we can keep a more liberal
At 24
ratio
instead of going up.
instead of going up. Or if we increase it, then we're also looking at those extra positions like those ROTC or ATC that we want to make sure is protected. That doesn't force a principal to have conversation with site base on,
Do
okay,
we
this
keep
is
this,
ours, do we
or-
keep this, or do we take away from the ATC? And we don't want to put those compromises. But ATC is regionally funded, and so
Right.
they're not technically, they're their positions by place, but they're not their positions by funding. So those are under the GRC staffing
Say that again?
allocation.
I
Is
thought,
it, are they
ATC
extra? Are they
Our
extra for-
ATC fund is funded by KDE.
Right.
Yeah.
But we provide them with 2 extra teachers.
Oh.
So
Right.
those
By
are our
choice.
employees, by choice,
By
because we
choice.
want to have those programs,
Mhm.
but not through the KDE model. So like our staff over there are part of our CCPS family, but they're not funded by Clark County Public Schools Board of Education. They're funded through the partnership that we have with KDE. We're really unique because we're the only district that attends our regional ATC. So we have a really sweet setup that we want to maximize its fullest potential too.
Anything else?
Okay.
We need a vote.
So the motion was made by Richardson, seconded by Considine. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. 15A, discussion of bullying policy. Bill Talk.
Yeah, so, I appreciate the time to discuss this briefly. And actually, another board member that isn't here tonight mentioned this to me at the same time. I got notified by a different parent. So it's happening in our district, more so than I'm thinking we may know. And I sent a copy of a 2019 statistics on bullying. I don't think it got distributed, but we can send that. That's the most current document I can find, and it's probably because of COVID and some of the things. And bullying consists of more than just, physical contact or physical bullying, but there's mental and there's online bullying. There's also being excluded bullying. So there's a lot of types of bullying going on. And I'm afraid with the COVID and the pandemic and everything that's happened, we might have lost track on being conscious of it in the district. And I'm not saying we have, just saying that may have, okay? And I consider bullying as detrimental to learning as someone bringing drugs to school, okay? It's detrimental, it's a cancer. It just is within, if there's a lot of bullying going on. So what I'm asking is for us to review what our policies are and possibly make it more strict, and including, there's whatever the procedure may be that principals go through today and administration goes through today. But if, to me, I consider it just as bad as drugs, so, there needs to be severe penalty up into, expulsion. So let's get a handle on this. As kids go into school, they should not even think about bullying because of consequences. I hate to be that way, but at the same time, there's also, I know there's also groups out there that come in and try to change the culture and create a more positive environment. So I think it's a two-pronged event, right? We've got to concentrate on those programs to concentrate on making sure people know and the students know and staff know, and what signs are to look for. But also we need to have consequences for this. And I don't think in the policies I've seen, I don't think we have strict consequences.
And a lot of that's connected to like the student handbooks.
Well, I've looked through that,
So
but it doesn't spell out
Right, it's-
what the consequences are. And I think the students need to know that consequences is as severe as bringing in drugs to school or, bringing a knife to school or weapons or something of that nature, because what you do you can hurt someone just as bad as bullying as you can with a weapon.
Social media is also a huge component of this. So one of the things that we were dealing with, so when I said this is very timely, so one of the things that we were dealing with is, working with the family, that some things were said on social media. Now that's outside of the school day. So, it's different, it's difficult too when lines get blurred because of students commenting on things during non-school hours, but that ends up coming to school and disrupting the educational environment. So having that all connected, and then you're looking at the student handbooks and there's like discipline matrix to it, but this can also be connected to that strategic planning process. So getting to that proactive side on helping us look at the culture and climate of our buildings, of how we work with leadership, how leadership works, becoming proactive. Like, are we always looking at discipline data, or are we starting to look at instructional data and culture data?
And when you're getting ahead of things, that's gonna end up driving what the discipline data is gonna say, because your consequences are gonna end up not necessarily changing, but they're gonna end up reducing on the behavior side when you start flipping everything to the front loading.
Being proactive.
And being proactive. And so there's that bleeds over into school because it really happened outside of school. And then there's, things that happen on the bus. There's situations there, and then you have, a bus driver. Sometimes we have bus monitors that are connected to routes, but we do have cameras now on all of our buses. So we're able to look at that, but I appreciated that you, reached out and we were able to have some conversation around it. So I support, what Mr. Talby is asking, and next month, I can actually bring our policy, I can bring samples of other policies, have those uploaded. We can make recommendations. I think it would be very fitting for Mr. Harris to be able to help me sit on a committee where we can look at things from the different grade levels, especially with middle school and high school, and we can kind of look at some of those things. Might even be able to pull a committee of students together that come from, all kinds of variety of backgrounds, not a straight A student, not just an athlete, but we want, a variety of kids. So I think we can pull this is like one of the most extremely important topics that we could actually discuss too. But we could pull all of that information together and bring it back with some recommendations for a first reading on, we might also find out that our policy's okay.
Yeah.
We just need
looking
to,
at it.
we just need to follow it better, and we also need to look at
And
our
the procedure
strategic-
part of it.
So be prepared for that too. It might be that we go through all of this and it just helps us to identify that, kind of like our mission, vision, and goal, and like we have this great thing, but we're just not
We're
living
just not
it.
following it.
So it could be that we have a policy that we just need to make sure that we're abiding by more, I don't wanna say ethically, but more, that we're paying more attention to it.
And also
So-
Kentucky Center for Safety too.
Yes.
Tap
Yeah.
into them.
Yeah.
I think they kind of helped.
Yeah, and Mr. Akers can
KSBA.
actually come in, John
Yeah.
Akers that runs that, he can actually come in and help us do some of those things too. But we'll be able to have conversation with the principals over this. We'll look at our policies, we'll pull policies from other school districts,
We're probably
and then
about
get
the
some of
same.
those. We can reach out to Prindle at KSBA to see if
Yeah.
she has any guidance for us too.
There's
But
also a gentleman at Kentucky State Police that has done some seminars at Bluegrass Community Technical College that I attended a couple of years ago on bullying, and name escapes me, but I can find that, and I'm sure BCTC personnel could tell you who that is as well.
Okay.
But they did some things out there before the pandemic, and I think it would be good to reengage them and possibly have some school functions. We've now got especially, at the high school, we've got an auditorium, we've got a place now where everybody can go to,
Yeah.
right? So that was before that was finished.
Where
Yeah.
they would have the people that would come in and have characters that
Yeah.
would talk about bullying, because I think it starts at a very young age.
It does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
middle school has the highest, if I remember right, middle school has the highest suicide rates, and a lot of that's caused by bullying.
And a lot of that was on the big increase because of the pandemic. That was one of the
Isolation.
statistics that went sky high. You know, a statistic that dropped?
School shootings.
True, but child abuse and neglect.
Because
Now-
it wasn't seen.
And it's
Right.
It's
because
not
kids weren't
reported.
in school.
Nobody was in school.
You
Yeah.
know, we are the
I remember
connection,
seeing something
yeah,
like that.
we are the connection to the community to make sure that, kids are in a safe manner, held in a safe environment. And so all of these things are gonna be really important, but it also goes back to, like, I love the idea of having these events, but who's gonna come to them?
Yeah, they don't.
Who comes? The
Well,
parents?
the
BCTC,
parents.
very few parents came.
Yeah.
That's the reason it's gotta be at the schools.
It's gotta be at the school level, but if you're wanting to target, information for parents, where do we need to have that at? Ball games, we need to think
Yeah.
more broadly about how we're
'Cause they're not
providing
gonna
these
come in on a
opportunities.
Tuesday night.
We need to partner with our churches and get information out to congregations. We need to partner with these other nonprofits when they have events. We can take information to them, but we have parents that come to ball games.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we have to get up and give a big spiel, but we need to make resources available and accessible to them so that if they just see something and they grab a pamphlet,
That's a good idea.
there's something that's
They
gonna
have something.
possibly change. The parent that's struggling with a child, they may not wanna come and talk to anybody, but they might walk over and grab a pamphlet when you have it in this big, big area. So I think sometimes we have well-intended plans. Ms. Bush had it was a mental health night over at one of our churches one evening. And we had the STEM bus there, and we had, X, Y, and Z, everything was happening. And we had a decent turnout, but the folks that came weren't the folks that needed it. And we had KSP there, and a lot of it was on social media. And it wasn't so much on bullying as it was on like sexual exploitation and how young kids are targeted by a person pretending to be somebody that they're not. And so there was just a lot of great information, but a handful of people, a handful of people that really needed to hear it, and a lot of people that were there just because we were excited that something was being put on for the community. And we were also competing with Justice Jingle that night, and we had a ball game at RDC and we had a ball game at GRC. But that's when it dawned on us. We were sitting there, and it's like, why didn't we try to have this on a scaled down version at our school when all of the people are there? So we just also want to think bigger and work smarter when we're having events like that. But we'll get some things together so that we can bring that back next month.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, number 16 is the academic suite update. Ms. Bonfield and Ms. Fiffen.
Yeah, and Mr. Chinaki is actually here tonight too. I didn't know he was going to be able to make it.
Okay.
All right, Kelly Fiffen, one of the instructional specialists for the district. So I want to start with our academic suite update. As you all know, we are doing Cardinal Lead PLCs each month. Our last one was on February 10th. And in your documents, you'll have just a short snippet of the meat of our agenda that we focused on in February 10th. The first thing that we looked at was our Terrace metrics data. That is our universal screener for behavior. That helps us to identify students that need additional social emotional learning support. So that was our first item on the agenda. Then we moved into district behavior data. We used Tableau through Infinite Campus to help identify areas of concern so that we can then build solutions to help address those issues. Using that tool through Infinite Campus, that can help determine what those events are, where their location is, the time, the day, so we can help determine what solutions that we need to put into place as a district. So we first looked as a district-wide data analysis, and then we did it by building. So then each building or each school team had time to look at their building data, and then they will take that back to their school MTSS teams, and they will further look at that in their school MTSS teams and then figure out a plan for their particular building. But we are looking at that district-wide to help provide support for each particular building. Then as we continue to move forward as a district and talk about our big rocks that Dr. McComas mentioned earlier, as an academic department, we are focusing on our new teacher mentoring program. So we are looking at what does a Clark County Public Schools teacher look like? What are those top attributes that we want all of our teachers to have? So that was one of our introduction brainstorming activities that we had all of our Cardinal Lead members do. We came across some suggestions such as being a leader, highly skilled, a good role model. They build relationships. They're an advocate for every child. They're being responsive to student needs. So those are some of the things that we're using to help build our new teacher mentoring program.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Yes.
Where are you in this presentation?
The slide right before this. Sorry. I wasn't looking at that.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm just talking and not looking at what you're all looking at.
Okay.
Okay, you want me to go on?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Yes.
let's make sure that we are aligning. Sorry, I think you were one ahead of us. Is this where we're at, Kelly?
I first was on there, but I went ahead and I'm on the next slide.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is where, as an academic department, we were just focused on what attributes do we want all of our teachers to have. So we are building our new teacher mentoring program. We are meeting with them monthly, but we want the input of all of our stakeholders. So we did that as one of our activities at our Cardinal Lead PLC. But as we continue to move forward as a district, not only do we want to look at that teacher aspect, but what do we want the journey to look like for our students? So what attributes do we want all students to have as they graduate from GRC? So this was another activity that we had. So what does our journey look like to becoming a CCPS graduate? And we brainstormed what those attributes would look like, and we used the C for Clark and L. And we kind of went through and said, what do those attributes look like? Some of the examples: we want to be courageous, character, a critical thinker, a leader, a lifelong learner. We want them to be accountable. We want them to be accomplished, respectful, resourceful, and reliable. We want them to be knowledgeable, successful, supported, and secure. So we first gathered that information from our lead team. We have since then put out a survey to our board members to get the input from you all. And we later want to take that to our community. We want to put all stakeholders so we can determine that best journey that we can have for all students in the Clark County Public School System.
And this will be aligned with what other districts would call profile of a graduate. So we're going to have our journey as a Clark, and we're going to really focus on those transitions to preschool to preschool to elementary school to Baker, and so on.
Okay, and I'll let Ms. Bonfield continue from here.
And just kind of, I'm Julie Bonfield, I'm the Director of State and Federal Grants. To kind of add to that, part of just the journey to a graduate that we think about is we want to start embedding that within our language in our classrooms. We want that to be the language that they see, at our ball games. We want to see so that we know that we're creating that picture, that we all have that ownership of developing that Meet the Clarks, that family atmosphere that we want, so that when they graduate from GRC, that we know that we've been successful, that we can let them go and become, successful citizens. So my part is to talk about case data, which is our second, we had our second window for our benchmark assessments that happened January 18th through the 28th. Our kindergarten students got to test for the first time during this window, so you'll kind of see how they did. Again, remember that our case assessments are built on our pacing guides. And so this is what they have learned up until this point, which kind of just gives us a picture of how, what instruction is taking place, what resources we're using, and how our students are performing with that. So you can kind of see there our kindergarten students. We have, if you want to go to the next slide, there you go. We had 52% of our students, kindergarten students, scoring distinguished. So if you notice, they either have it or they don't. Right now, right? So that is definitely, I think, leading to some discussion to see what we need to do. You will notice our first grade, I just noticed this. We have 125 students showing part of our, the company that we're working with. They set cut scores to this data. And what they've done is they have left out 2 of our groupings for first grade. And so we have emailed today, and they're working on that. So that's why you'll notice that discrepancy, that 125 students, where the rest of them are 330. So you can see overall, again, second grade, that's a grade I think that we look at that has been mainly heavily impacted by COVID, by our pandemic. And so that, I know Dr. McComas spoke earlier about interventionists looking at and having conversations with interventionists and looking at what's working, what's not working, instructional strategies that we can do to make sure that we're closing that gap for that age group.
So what are we doing? I mean, because I hate to see a lot of red, and it's alarming in that there's very little yellow and green. It's either they have it or they don't. There is no in between, which is very unusual because usually it's your green and yellow and some blue and some red. So this is alarming.
It is. I think, and that's one thing looking at, I've really looked at data and I've tried to analyze, but just going into classrooms and being in the moment to see what instruction is happening, what's working for our kids. And I think one of the main things when we talk to teachers the most is what's worked before COVID is not necessarily working now. Does that make sense? Within, I think we are doing kind of a program audit per se, to see what programs are successful that we're utilizing within our buildings. Right now our elementary schools, they do different things. Each building does different things. And so really having conversations about what is successful, what are we seeing that's successful, that we need to carry on and build that conversation across all 4 of our elementary schools instead of just one. That is a main focus, really, of what we're doing. But I think just coming together and having conversations about instruction. What is the data showing us? What do our kids need? Being responsive to our kids' needs in the moment is what we're doing. Honestly, I can see you're not supposed to compare from fall to winter because it is based on our pacing guides. But our data looks better in the winter than it did really in the fall. So I'm hoping that we're going to see a huge click, with just getting back to some kind of normalcy. That is our hope. I know our teachers, just the conversations that's taking place, the work that they're providing our students, the intentional work and instruction that they're giving our kids, they're going above and beyond. It's just trying to make up for that learning loss.
Is there an elementary school that is doing a lot better than the other elementary schools? Is it all?
It's in pockets,
Is it?
right? Like it's, within each grade levels. As you look at the data, there may be a first grade group at one school that's doing really, really well. There may be a fourth grade group that's doing really, really well in a different subject area, That is something, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. When we have our Cardinal Connections Academy, is that we're going to start highlighting some of the great teaching that's going on, because I want to highlight, if they're doing it in their buildings and in their classrooms and we're seeing the data, I want to share that with everybody. And so I do think that'll give us a great opportunity this summer as we're building those, to allow those people to become leaders, build capacity in them, confidence in their leadership, that then they can start having conversations with other teachers. If you look at elementary math, again, we, honestly, we perform better in math than we do reading. Okay, we will have a huge focus with literacy. That's going to continue to be our focus.
Maybe the L in Clark should be literate.
Literate.
That's it, literate.
Which really is the big plan for our school ESSER. Our school ESSER plans were all around literacy. And that program audit that Ms. Bonfield talked about is going to be really key, because we're getting to see that, like, oh, this is a fabulous program. Well, why isn't the usage level showing us that it's a fabulous program? Or, oh, this is a program that they didn't really like. Well, really, because that's what they're using, and we're not getting the results that we are hoping for, because we're using a program that's not as reliable as the other one that we bought, but we didn't have the training model set up.
Right.
So that program audit is also kind of where the rubber meets the road. We're really getting to see,
do we have too many programs?
do we have too many which is usually the problem.
Yeah.
And we want them to be aligned, and we want them to make sure that they are feeding into one another. Elementary, she focused on, is going to be really key, because Baker's not going to be successful as it can be, and neither will our other schools.
It's going to roll up.
If our elementary schools are not operating as a system and not as those individual schools. Interventionists are really key, but if we're not working in tandem with the general ed tier one teacher, we're working hard, but we might be working against one another.
Working harder.
Well, and with the interventionist is just having those conversations collectively about effective interventions and what's working with kids and what we can do to, really make an impact.
Right.
So there's our elementary grade 4 science also. You'll see that reflected
And
there.
that's kind of scary too.
Yes.
But I will say with science, that is so those new standards really started rolling out right before the pandemic. I don't, as far as the assessment.
Right.
We were piloting that assessment, and so then COVID happened. So that's again I think something that we're going to see that loss until we can really get in and start thinking. It goes back. I feel like literacy will help with those scores, just when they start doing the claim and evidence. So you'll see Baker scores there as well. They are doing really well. If you notice the social studies there, they have a high number of distinguished. That looks very good. RDC, same thing. So their social studies, grade 8. You notice their distinguished is pretty high. There, so those two schools look good. And I will say, I think, those two schools with GRC Collective, they're able to have those conversations, those instant, as far as within their departments.
Right.
To think about the assessments and the instruction that's taking place, what worked, what didn't work, that kind of thing. GRC and Phoenix combined, you can see those for English 1, Algebra 1, English 2, and Geometry. And again, those look pretty good.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you think looks good. I mean, 52%, and it's only of 198, but that are novice in English.
The English, again, I mean, that's the pattern we're seeing across the board.
I mean, I don't want to see any red, but.
I mean, algebra, 58, almost 60%.
60% is red, yeah.
Wow. I mean, if we got 60% in red for algebra, how do we expect them to go to college and pass algebra?
Now, here's one thing I will say
because
about
young ones
this,
have
about CASE
Yeah.
and with GRC, is that, so this is based on a pacing guide that we collected this summer. I have talked with their with their building leaders as far as looking at where they're at in the pacing guide. So even though this is painting a picture for where they are, I don't think it is a true picture per se to follow that pacing guide. And that's something we've talked about with GRC about how can we make this, we want that, we want that picture of how our kids are performing, but we also have to be mindful in the sense that this is brand new as far as they handed us a pacing guide at the very beginning of the year. We gave it to a company, and the company is creating test questions based on that pacing guide. Well, as a teacher in the classrooms, we know that we're constantly having conversations within our departments, modifying those pacing guides. What's working, maybe I need to spend a little bit longer on this or less on this. So I do say that, that is something that moving into next year, I'm hoping we will be more familiar with the work and thinking about that we're not going to see as much red.
And if I may,
Yes.
the red is indicative, obviously, of the student knowledge and performance. But it's also indicative of how true are we staying to our curriculum maps.
Right.
And are we in our PLCs, and I'm not saying this is all new to Clark County, but the keeping in tune with the system is, I think, new. Like, our building leaders are going in and working with, in PLCs with teachers, and they're having those conversations. And I don't know how much of that was actually being reported back when they could actually go through and adjust a pacing guide. And so now it's kind of like if you see a student getting hung up, we're spending a little bit more time instead of trying to meet them where they're at and progress them through, which then isn't aligned to this. So it's also good information for us to see how our teachers are giving us feedback. And then the other breakdown is, are we building the system that's meeting the needs of our teachers? And so that's some of the things that Mr. Chinaki and Ms. Fithen are doing as well, is like, are we building a system that's allowing us to get feedback from our teachers on where they are at in the pacing guide or in the curriculum map? Because then that feeds back to CASE so that we can make the appropriate adjustments. So this is a year that we're learning more about this. We're also learning about our teachers, and our teachers are learning about students. And Ms. Bonfield will later tell us when she wants to go away from CASE, because this is all stuff that we can do at our district level. We can create our own benchmarks, and that's what she's hoping to go to. But again, it's kind of getting to that capacity. We don't have the capacity right now to do that, and then to be able to look at the analytics of where they're at in a pacing guide or a curriculum map.
Because technically, the assessments are based on Clark County assessment. I mean, pacing guides. It's not like you're taking a national test and comparing.
Yeah, this is literally, they took our pacing guides and they have created cold assessments. So we open up the window.
It should be better
if
it's our pacing.
Yes. And that is the hope, that as we build capacity within our teachers, that we're going to bring teachers together to create those common assessments and then be able to analyze the results.
Is the assessments that they're creating not aligned with the way we're teaching? Are they harder than the how we're presenting the standards?
Right. So this test, and that was one thing the company emphasized to us tremendously with CASE, is that they are very rigorous assessments. They are very challenging. So we were very aware, our fall and winter data wouldn't look the best because it's actually, it's challenging. you
Right.
know? I think it's a great conversation to have with teachers to say, let's look at this, you know? What does our teaching, how is it aligning to these assessments?
So
I think when,
So you don't think all of this is COVID? It could be not reaching students
sure.
from,
Could be a little
What
bit of
were you-
It could be,
everything.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I see it as being a little bit of everything. You know, I think teachers have to have the conversation about when we teach a standard, we can't just scratch the surface of the
You gotta-
standard.
they
We've
gotta
got to
know.
go, right?
they gotta get it.
You do, and I think that's one thing I'm very hopeful that this is doing, is that it's allowing us to have those conversations, that they are seeing what this kind of test looks like. And then when we do start building capacity together and having conversations, creating our own, then we're gonna know, we're gonna be mindful of that and what that standard looks like to then tailor our instruction to that assessment.
Can I add something too? I know I'm not in this department anymore, but I got to be beside Julie when she was going through all of this, putting it together. Case was really presented to us by Fleming County. And I don't know if y'all know about Fleming County or not, but in 2020, their superintendent was superintendent of the year, and now they're district of the year. And when we spoke to them, this is what they told us. Ms. Bonfield and I got to hear all about how they rely a lot on rigor through the case assessment to align curriculum math, to align expectations and systemic change. So, not to intrude, but it just, yes, the increase in rigor is just incredible. And as a parent and a teacher.
Right.
I've got to see both.
Any other questions about that? Okay. All right, so the next thing we'll talk about is the Cardinal Connections Academy that we are in the process of developing. So it's going to be 2 weeks out of the summer. That's going to be a week in July.
Maybe 3.
Maybe,
Maybe 3.
maybe 3. Right now, 2. But the second to last week in July, then we won't do anything the last week of July, and then the first week of August. And what we're going to do is it's going to be housed at GRC. It's an academy that our teachers are going to be able to sign up for based on what their needs would be in the classroom. So again, like I talked earlier about highlighting leaders within our district and providing professional development, they will then provide the professional development for other teachers in our district. So it will kind of just be an academy that they can go to. We're going to have a catalog, so they'll be able to see based on their needs of what they need to go through to get their professional development hours. We have surveyed our staff to determine those needs. And basically, as we look at this survey, they are really wanting some support in the social emotional learning component with our students, and of course, literacy. How do we teach those students who are reading below grade level? So those are our two main, throughout the survey that we've given to our teachers, that's what they're wanting, that's what they're needing. And so we are really working as a department to put together this academy that's going to bring our teachers together so that they can work together from kindergarten teachers all the way up through our 12th grade. To be able to come in, tailor their needs, and provide them that support within our district instead of having to go somewhere else to get it.
Will this only be for district staff, or are you thinking of bringing in any sort of professional development, expertise to help with it?
I think anything that our teachers are needing, that's what we're going to try to do.
Okay, good.
And it's also going to be building capacity with our building leaders. Like some principals have an expertise in something that has been untapped and they're only sharing it maybe with a small group in their own school or at their school. We want to make sure that any teacher and or instructional assistant, counselors, the social emotional learning piece, that they all have an opportunity. FRIS staff, they have to get continuing education hours. We're going to make sure that there is something that every staff member can go through. So much is going to be district. We started with 6. Then we went up to 12, and then I went back down to 6 because I thought as a principal, I didn't want somebody always dictating to me how many hours. I'm like, I was a preschool principal, so it was hard to match the district need. Well, we had our 5-star group, which is our principal meeting, and they want the 12 hours that the district creates. And so we're going to be doing that around instruction and social emotional learning, which is all connected to the MTSS model that we all collectively have been working on. And this is going to be more of a building those own experts. And, if there was something I was really proud of and great at, I would love to be able to share that with my colleagues and not them go get
good training somewhere else, but it wasn't connected to our kids, you know, and you're gonna own that even more when you're getting to do it for your own family, your own community, your own school
And
community.
it also goes back to that Clark County teacher that we talked about earlier, when we ask about what are those attributes of a Clark County teacher. We want our teachers to know and feel confident in their work to kind of become that Clark County way, right? That we, you know, we're building each other up, we're providing that professional development across our district so that that's going to kind of become those attributes of that Clark County teacher.
And we know how to have difficult conversations, just like what we're doing with the case data. You know, it's not what we want to see, but we've got to be able to peel through all that and determine why it's like that so that we can, you know, we can change assessments and make it look
Pretty.
We can make it look the way you
don't
want
have to
it,
look
but
pretty.
if we're doing that, we're not being, you know, honest with ourselves, and then at the end of the year, we're not going to see any growth.
Yeah.
So I'd rather really get into the weeds now and have a really nice manicured lawn later.
Yeah.
Eye time? You got one more?
Yes.
Sorry.
So iTime. Our iTime is started again back this month with our engagement and instruction. So first semester, we focused a lot on culture. This time it's going to be over engagement. So again, our building leaders, and that's what we talked about during our Cardinal Lead. So we're dispersing out into the district. We're going to their PLCs at each building first, and then we're visiting classrooms. And then teachers are getting feedback on engagement this time. Part of our Cardinal Lead is we are going to start analyzing that. So I go back to when I was a building leader, and you know, if going into classrooms, I want to know what they're seeing. So I'm getting that feedback. But then now I hope that we'll be able to have conversations to say, this is what we're seeing, this is the needs. And then all of those conversations build into that Cardinal Connections Academy to hopefully provide professional development that we're seeing from our teachers.
And it increases the number of instructional rounds.
Yes.
And so some of our principals are starting to, I don't want to say struggle, but it's like, you know, I don't want to be out of my building. And I said, I don't want you to either. But when somebody, don't think about being out of your building. Think about when somebody comes to your building, when another principal, assistant principal, district-based team, superintendent, when we come to your building,
We're giving up our time.
how does that make you feel for your building? Well, they get anxious, they get nervous, they get excited. There's like all of these emotions, and they want the feedback. All of our other leaders want that too, and they don't want to be out of their building. But this is an opportunity for us to make sure that we're being very honest and real and vulnerable. We want to stay in this vulnerable state. It's kind of like you got to get out of the box just enough to be uncomfortable so you can grow. But if you get too out of the box, it's, you know, it's not a good thing. And so it's allowed us, we're probably getting close to 300 extra, at least 250, because we were at 140. So we're probably close to 250 extra observations that would not have happened if we did not have embedded ITOM, intentional ITOM for all of our building leaders to go in and out of each other's space. And that includes Phoenix ATC preschool.
Good.
That they need to see what the full journey of a Clark County student looks like. So I'm really excited about this. I get excited about so many things. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Bonfield.
All right, number 17, discussion, what?
Oh, I'm sorry, it was just update.
Okay.
I was making sure I didn't mess anything
Okay.
up on there. I apologize.
Nope, no problem.
It did say acknowledge and approval.
On 16,
What do we need an approval on that?
it just says update. 16?
16.
Yeah,
Acknowledge and approval.
Yeah, we
Oh,
did
did
change-
you change it?
Yeah.
Okay. All
And so
right.
it was on, I'm sorry.
It's on the newer one?
This one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you
That was
wanna-
upon my research of all of these
Do you
other
need an approval?
Do we
districts.
need approval on?
We have it set as the current agenda to acknowledge and approve the academic suite update.
All right.
Yes.
I'll make a motion
Yeah.
to approve the academic suite update.
Thank
I'll
you.
second.
All those in favor? I'm sorry.
Aye.
That's okay. That was my comment. Motion passes 3-0. All right, number 17, discussion of and set date for March or April work sessions. Dr. McComas.
I just thought it was coming close to the time
Yeah.
that we want to have a work session, and, you know, there'll be no items necessarily on the agenda for us to approve. It won't be set up like this. I would prefer it to be, you know, tables. We'll have school time coming in. They'll be given a charge of what you all want to hear from our schools. And we'll be able to come in and have not a dog and pony show, but we want to have good conversations about
About the red.
About the red, what's
About the
going on,
red.
what they're doing, what are the social emotional components that are going on in their schools. And so, and you don't, do we have to set a date today if they want to, because we don't have Ms. Hendricks
I was
or?
gonna say, should we
Yeah.
table this?
Should we wait?
Yeah.
Or
For Megan and.
But the
Ashley.
problem is we won't be back until the
Yeah.
end of March.
or can we?
Yeah, or can we assign, I just want to make sure we were discussing it. Can we all look at calendars and I can touch base with you all individually, or I'll do one of those doodle polls and we'll kind of set a date and then I'll get it announced so that our.
Yeah, because if we wait till our next meeting, it's
It'll
in
be
March.
March.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We will
Yeah.
just-
So if
I mean, if
we,
we're gonna do work sessions, what about a week before our regular meeting? Like,
Okay.
Okay.
Before.
so do you
Yeah.
want to do one in March or do you want to
Yeah.
do one in
Yeah.
April? Okay,
Yeah.
so
I
a
would-
week before, and we're gonna probably just shoot for that same Tuesday, the
Yeah.
Tuesday
That would
before.
make it
Okay.
easy to, you know,
Yeah,
work sessions, if we have work
What
sessions.
is that
it'd
date,
be-
Sherry? You're looking at a calendar.
It would be the 22nd,
That's-
wouldn't
The 22nd, let's see.
it? Oh, wait a minute, no,
No, it'd be the 15th.
yeah,
Be out of town that week.
oh, are you?
But we've
What
got to
about
give
the week?
Dr. McComas time to plan.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we'll have a state tournament and all of
Yeah, I
that
was
coming up
thinking,
too.
oh.
So I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Maybe we don't do anything in March Madness. Maybe we wait till April.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm
Do
just
we
thinking, is it
wanna-
going to be convenient for you?
Like, I live for this stuff, so like, I'm all
Okay.
excited about doing a work session, but, I also wanna make sure that I'm not, I'm giving our principals enough time
Yeah, because
to pull stuff together, and I'm more worried about our high school with our, state tournaments.
Everything going
Yeah,
on.
that's what I'm
thinking. Yeah.
It's gonna be busy month. in March.
Yeah, so can we do the Tuesday before the April
Yeah.
board meeting? Okay.
Yep.
Do you want me present for that?
Let's see.
No, I don't feel like,
Because usually the Tuesday.
What is
before.
spring break?
oh, that's right, you've got another one.
spring break's the first week of April.
Okay.
So that would be the 19th?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
19th.
And then what I'll do is I'll send out like a survey for you all,
Okay.
so that you can give me feedback on what are some things that you would like to discuss, so that we can make sure that our building leaders are properly prepared with sessions. And we'll have like a session where you all won't stay together.
Mm-hmm.
You'll end up going to a different session. We'll run it almost like a PD Academy, a mini PD Academy
Okay.
in here, where you just get to really engage with them and ask questions and hear things that they're sharing. Also be able to give them ideas and
Right.
feedback.
I want to know
too.
what
Okay.
what they're worried about.
Mhm.
You know, the red worries me.
Yeah.
I can't help it.
And I'm not saying they're not worried about that too, but
Yeah.
they're worried about the social emotional side of things. They're worried about, sometimes it's small stuff. We get caught up in small stuff that they worry about, and it's trying to help them reduce the anxiety of being caught up in a small thing so that they can focus on the bigger things. But I think they would appreciate that just as much as you all would. So we'll get that going, and then like I said, I'll get you a survey out so that we can make sure that they're building the information that is going to meet the needs of the meeting. Okay, thank you.
So tentatively for April 19th, but you're going to put out a,
Mm-hmm.
okay. All right. Moving on to the finance update, number 18. Consider approval of recommended primary depository for 2022-2023 school year.
We're trying to keep
Miss
you here
Ellis.
until you have that baby.
I thought I was gonna have it yesterday. I had
Yeah,
some
we were in a
false
false
labor,
labor
so-
day.
I
Are we
may not
that
be here
close?
tonight, but I'm here.
Yeah.
Hang in there.
We had an interesting
36
day
weeks,
yesterday.
so we're like on the
Yeah.
countdown. So we are at the end of our current, the way we bid our bank of depository. We are at the last renewal piece of that year. We did a 2-year with 3-year options, 3 1-year options, so 5 years. So we're at the end of that. So we had to bid it again for this year. So we put the same RFP out there that we have in the past. We advertised it in the paper. We put it on our website. And Traditional Bank was the only one who is our current banking institution who gave us a bid back. So obviously the recommendation is to stay with who we are. And just a little background on that, the banks are flooded with funds right now, with all this federal funding. They're just flooded, and they are not seeking to get more monies at this point. So, I mean, a traditional bank did tell me, like, if you weren't already our customer, we would not be bidding on this, like, because we just don't know what to do with the money. They just don't know what to do with the money. They all have so much money, so. What a nice thing, but at the same time, it makes it difficult, you know, to get good rates and get all of that stuff. So you will see the rate is down from the initial bid 5 years ago, but it's still in line with what we're getting right now. So nothing is changing as far as our terms of what our current year we are operating in. We get a floor of 0.5%. That is what we are, will still receive. So there's just any questions?
Is this a 5-year or 3-year with?
So the way we're gonna do this going forward is instead of doing the 2-year, it's just upon recommendation of not getting the board into a contractual contract for more than 1 year at a time. We're gonna do 1 year at a time going forward. So it's for next year, and then we'll have the option to renew it every year with them.
Okay.
Yes. And then at any point that the board would want to bid again, we could bid again, but we just have that optional 1-year renewal from this point forward.
And you've been happy with them?
Yes.
Okay.
They are very easy to work with and direct. Actually, the girl is waiting on me to text her tonight and be like, did it pass? So I'm going to go sit down and text her as soon as you all vote. So, I mean, I just have direct cell phone contact. Like, I can pick up the phone and call them immediately at any point of the day, and she's great. I had to take care of an incident on Christmas break. I was home and took care of it while I was sitting at home on the phone with her. So, I mean, it's just they're wonderful to work with.
Were you surprised that no other bank bid?
Yeah, it's shocking.
Not really with the market.
Yeah.
And knowing, and we want to stay local. So really probably the only other options would be the big banks that don't have a branch in Winchester. And that's not functional for us to have if they don't have a branch here.
Yeah.
So that doesn't surprise me, being that we are trying to stay with a local branch.
Make a motion to approve item 18 and approve the recommended primary depositor for 2022-23 school year for traditional bank.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Thank you. Oh, you get to stay. See, number 19, acknowledge and approval of monthly CCPS financial update.
So we alluded last month that we were going to start this process doing a monthly update, and so this is kind of what we have put together. And if there's anything additional you all would like to see, I would be more than happy to add it, but just trying to give a quick overview of general fund and taxes, which are the big things. You know, those are the big things for us. So looking at our general fund and where we stand against our budget and what we've collected, we're right at 50% revenues. We were at that point exactly last year. So we're spot on for how we collected revenues last year. Expenditures, we're at 38% and we were 36% last year. So we're up about 2%, but we're back in school.
Do you have a question?
I'm sorry.
No, I just want to make sure she's on the.
It says 2021, January 2021.
Okay.
You know I'm pregnant, right?
Well, but then I thought there was a 2022. But I thought there was a 22, and I thought it was just shared in our private drive. But I couldn't
Okay,
I'm trying to find
I
it.
saw you looking for something. I was like, I just want to make sure that
That's
you're on the
supposed to be
right.
a 22. Thank you,
Okay.
Ms. Considine.
Keep thinking, I know I've seen a 22.
And I reviewed this. I'm sorry.
I don't know what your excuse is.
Yeah, I know. I don't have
Title
one.
page.
You're not pregnant, are you?
Nobody looks at the
No.
title page anyway, just like goes by the title page. Let's look at the numbers.
It's hard
Yeah.
to get used to writing that. I'm so not-
Sorry.
No, I'm
No,
sorry.
thank you for catching that. It's supposed to be 22. So this is the review as of the end of January of 22, January 31st, 22. So you will always be that month behind, you know, because I'll have the finished month to report on. So really, we're kind of spot on, and even when you look at the local tax collections, collections against budget compared to even last year, we're 1% to 2%. I mean, so we're right in how we've been, and we collected what we budgeted last year, above and beyond what we budgeted last year. So, I mean, we're projecting that we're gonna collect our budget. I mean, staying on this track. So that's fantastic news. And then I just wanted to give you kind of a synopsis of what this last month has looked like in finance. I'm not going to read all those to you, but we just kind of, you know, that's what we've been working on. Those are all the things that, and a whole lot more stuff, but that's kind of the big things that have been going on in finance. So the way this update's going to look is we have separated out supporting reports that have been requested over the years for supporting information that has been asked from the board or things that we have provided you, but not necessarily had to have by KRS presented to you and approved. So we've kind of sorted those out and put them in this category, and so those will continue to be provided, but under supporting reports. And then under consent will be the actual items that must be approved by y'all, things that I have to, as a finance officer, present to you and you all have to approve. So while I am up here, consent items, are there any questions on those items?
Thank you.
That are within consent? We've got a capital funds request, the normal school fundraiser request, boosters, balance sheet monthly, financial and salaries and accounts
Capital
payable.
funds request, did I miss that one?
38 is the capital funds request.
So to highlight what that is exactly is we did talk about the capital funds that are still available for the year that we would, based on expenses we have paid out of general fund, we would claim those and move them to general fund. So this is a combination of, you've approved the bus wash, the concrete work, summer projects, and then we're collecting the balance for property insurance and Kista debt, which is an allowable use of our capital funds to capture those available funds and put them in our general fund, which makes them more usable, whereas they're very restricted when they sit in our capital funds. So it's just the documentation that has to go to KDE for that. So I just want to, on a side note, because I probably will not be at the March and possibly the April meeting, Ms. Jennifer Dorsey Hedges, who is our accounting manager, she will be kind of managing the finance department while I'm out, and she will be presenting this finance update at the board meetings, the next 2 meetings. I might be back by April, it just depends on those kids.
Yeah.
I'll definitely miss the March meeting.
You won't be
It's her second. And she's having a little bit of a hard
It's
time
not hard
turning over.
pregnancy.
So she's like, no, I can do this at home. I was like, you are going to go enjoy that baby. So I have all the confidence with Ms. Hedges too. So we're going to be just fine. We have a meeting tomorrow to kind of debrief because we did have a scare yesterday, a little 2 weeks earlier than we thought. So we're gonna go back and
Be ready.
Ms. Ellis has developed a good team in finance. So we're gonna be fine.
So any other questions for me?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good luck.
Would anybody like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve item 18.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. All right, then we move on to the internal board business. We're going to table
That's
number
tabled.
20. All right, and
Did we miss that? Was that 19 or 18?
We did
19, we just did the monthly
You
approval.
did that one, and Sherry just did that one.
Yeah, I had Mr. Tolby, Ms. Considine on 18, and then I had Mr. Tolby, Ms.
Okay.
Richardson on 19.
Okay, just didn't check it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And table 20. And then you're up, Dr. McComas, on your superintendent's report.
Okay, so a couple of changes to the superintendent's report is now I'm including officially ahead of time. So this is in your big packet that I also gave you, but it was also online for you. And this is going to be serve as a director update from base team.
Okay.
So this goes out to all of our principal building leaders, and so you all will have access to it. It will run a little bit in the rears though, because this is aligned with our PLC lead meeting, but it will give you an update of what's going on in the EC world, what's going on in the student service world, what's going on in the HR world. So a little bit more information than I'm going to be able to give you in the full superintendent's report, because that's from our collection of our base team. Under standard 1, and Mr. Case and I emailed this to you. Do you have the
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We're gonna actually start with Mr. Harris. You wanna tell them about, our collaboration and then show them what we got?
Sure.
I'm excited about this too.
So I reached out to Dr. McComas. It's been a work in progress for a little while now. I'd say a couple months, maybe a few. Well, I thought it would be a really cool idea, and she shared the idea to have just one big cardinal calendar. I think you came up with a better name for it. So.
Actually, Ms. Fithen comes up with names.
Good job, Ms. Fithen.
But the idea is there.
So I thought it was a good idea to have a big calendar so that everyone could see everything, all the great things that are going on at schools. So like if I want to go to one and then Ms. Constantine wants to go to one, then we can all go and we'll know what's happening at each school. So if you look behind you / beside you, it's got everything.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I struggled a little bit at first, and so as Mr. Harris and I were talking about this, I'm like, it drives me crazy because I'm trying to get to a lot of stuff, and it's hard. And then I'm trying to get connected with the high school and the middle school and all of these places. Well, then Mr. Keene added me to his Google Calendar, and that was like game changer. So I could see everything. I was like, this would be great if everybody, but not everybody can be connected because their staff meetings when they're doing fire drills. I mean, it's way more information than I need. Yeah. So we kept talking about it. The mayor's also been one on me since I started that he wants to know one place to go find everything in our district. And so again, another conversation happened, and I kept putting it on our base team meetings, and we all were, coming up with, yeah, we need to do this, but we couldn't quite figure out how. So Mr. Kaysen and his technology team helped us get it coordinated by, instead of us having a district calendar that 10 people across the schools are connected to, we have Miss Cooper, Camille Cooper, our receptionist at central office. She's connected to every school's calendar, and so she can go in and duplicate, and it has everything from like a Justice Jingle to a musical that's going on at Baker to a ball game that's going on, and you can go back. Do you mind going back and highlighting the calendar? So you go to the home screen, that stays fixed at the top. You click on calendars and you go over to events.
Oh, the event calendar.
Yeah, the event calendar, and that shows you everything that's on there from all of our schools. And some schools don't use a Google Calendar, so they're either going to come around with the Google Calendar or they have to send their hard copy calendar, and then Miss Camille puts that on there as well. So it's still a work in progress. I didn't really share it before because we started having it and it was like kind of sporadic. And now we're kind of getting there, and Miss Cooper's got a good system where she's getting a lot of things loaded, but it might even have like site-based meetings, anything that's really open and welcome to the public.
It'd be on there.
We want to have that on there. And then you brought your other things?
So this is our latest issue of Smoke Signals. I brought Dr. McComas on last month, and I've had these for a month to bring to you guys, and I just kept forgetting.
Well, thank
so
you.
So start with Ms. McCoy, and then the rest of you guys have one.
Oh, I already have mine.
You
Sorry.
already do?
Yeah, I already
Okay.
have mine.
I can get you another one if you want.
Yeah. So, and we're going to be collaborating on some other projects that you will start seeing more of this role be expanded next month. But now if you don't mind going to my report, please. So under Standard 1, which is strategic leadership, and I will probably start printing out my actual calendar for you all too.
Okay.
Because I'm just giving you highlights of what I'm working on or doing throughout the month. So in Standard 1, which is strategic leadership, the staffing allocation reviews, you've seen that on there several times. We actually had those finished. We are still wrapping up some things for Phoenix and for preschool because they're not SBDM managed schools. But I've already had preliminary meetings with both of those. And then the other big thing for strategic leadership is actually that strategic leadership planning. And I already went through those 6 steps. And I put the link in there if you want to go in and find more information about the Studer group that we're going to be using. Okay. Under Standard 2, with instructional leadership, that Cardinal Lead PLC, you're going to see, and we'll always have our topics of focus on there. Digging deeper into getting past that RTI model, which really focuses on behavior and/or academics, and we want to be that full MTSS model, which is a pretty lofty goal, but I'm confident that we're going to get there. This month, like Ms. Bonfield was sharing, we focused on exploring Tableau data, which is from Infinite Campus, and they had to really dig deep into that. We used a 4-step problem-solving process that's also in your insert that I gave you for your binder. so you can see everything that they were doing there. And again, it was a vulnerable day. I mean, it's sometimes the data's not good, and you gotta start having really hard conversations about why. But that usually leads to, once you get past the problem, you get to good conversation. And then we started a 5-star meeting, and the 5-star meeting is under the concept of, Mr. Traube actually already used the reference once about your first line defenders, your boots on the ground, your troops in the field. For our principals, everything's gonna rise, our success is really gonna rise and fall on the shoulders of our leaders in our building. So those are your generals. So we have a 5-star meeting with our principals every month now. And this is really a non-agenda meeting that we come that they can bring concerns, they can vet ideas, they can help each other solve problems. So I'll kind of reflect on what we talked about, and some of our topics were around how to included leading schools to increase capacity. So we were back to that. What's going on? We have all of these supports, and we're still not seeing a lot of growth. It's like, well, how can we increase capacity of all of our staff? And support for teachers in that tier 1 setting. And we also talked about ARCs and how you use the ARC as the tool to help provide the supports that are aligned and vetted for students. So we had some conversations around that too. We talked about our Cardinal Connection, the PD Academy, and some of the things that they wanted, which was the surprising part because they want 12 hours. So as principals, I'm thinking they're like, oh, they're going to probably only want us to take 6. Well, they want to split it, and they want us to design 12 hours. And that PD Academy is going to also be built to meet their needs too. So we want to say these are the tracks that all teachers have to take to meet their district requirement. But we also want to develop it so principals can use it aligned with their professional growth plans, aligned with the PD survey that schools and teachers were able to give, that we can then develop that PD Academy so that the school side of the PD can also be met in those 2 weeks. So that's the goal of that. Under cultural leadership, some of the highlighted events that I attended is the Ministerial Association meeting. We're actually going to expand that where it's not just myself or Dr. Livingood going. We want to have a schedule where a principal has to attend and a family resource coordinator. They all want to attend, so we just want to schedule. They can attend more if they want. But we find a lot of great resources in our Ministerial Association. While they're not for profit, while they're faith-based, they're non-profit, but they're not necessarily connected to any one church. It's just good services that we can connect with for our school. And so we're going to continue to expand that. I've been working with the CCGIS, I shouldn't say I've been working with them, actually our SLEOs have, so Mr. Stump and Chief Mulligan work with them. We had a meeting today, and Mr. Berryman told me that he came and actually met with our SLEOs last month, and all of those site evaluation plans, they were given maps to the resource officers, so we were able to get that completed. RDC, GRC went to their cheer and dance expo. That was pretty awesome. A lot of talent was out there, and then they went on to place. Also went to the Winter Guard regional competition one Saturday. That's when we had to shift everything around by 2 hours. So I got to take advantage of also catching some Civitan basketball, which was really kind of important, I thought, to our community, and it was fun. I got to participate in a 2-day judging event for RDC, The Amazing Gauntlet, where we're going to get to send some kiddos to, I believe, Atlanta. It sounds kind of hokey, but the ATC Hot Chocolate event was pretty awesome. Mr. Kindred's wife actually put that together, but it was on the day that the KDE regional director was there, and so she came in. Ms. Fithen was actually there. We were doing observations in all of our ATC classrooms, and so I got to go around with her and have some conversation about that. And then I do the mornings on Main, and we always just kind of talk about usually things that I've posted on my personal Facebook for superintendent, CCPS Facebook, or things that Mr. Smith knows is going on. He grills you pretty well on the mornings on Main. I have to get really well. He hears me rattling my papers. I was like, I feel like I'm, doing homework assignments. And then Mr. Harris has already talked about the district calendar. So standard 4 is organizational structure, working through current job descriptions. So that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the things we're talking about. So we're consolidating a lot of these positions. And that doesn't mean we're eliminating positions. We're just trying to clean up job descriptions. For example, we may have 9 job descriptions in a certain category. There's an elementary this and an elementary that and a level 1 and a level 2, and we just need to have broader job descriptions, so 3 to 4 instead of 9. So we're working on those things. We're also advancing leadership by, I'm writing letters of recommendation. I've got 2 voting leaders that are participating in a leadership development program that they have to be selected into. We also, I'm reviewing a doctoral candidate's capstone for, she's one of our technology resource teachers. She's actually in our third and final review, so I'm excited for her. She's about ready to finish her doctoral program. She keeps me on my toes with the Google Meets back and forth, but I've been excited to help her with that. And then also looking at repurposing positions. So we are creatively revisiting vacant and needed positions with our current job descriptions and trying to be more efficient, more aligned. That's going to help us with a better organizational structure for Clark County. Under Standard 5, managerial leadership, we moved to masking recommended. I did have a little hiccup. Communication was really keen. For me, I want to make sure we're tight on how we disseminate that information to our public, to our leaders, to our staff. And we had a hiccup where the communication actually went out. It should have gone out half an hour ahead of time to our staff. And then instead it went out a half an hour ahead of time to our community. And so we had some staff that, I think I got a little backlash from that, but that was not intentionally set up that way. So we had a couple of people out that day that was trying to help, but I need to own that, make sure that they understand that we always want them to know first. We have conversation with our principals, regardless of what communication is going out. But another thing that I didn't have on here is that Mr. Kaysen told me today, the 5G tower that has to be created for the AT&T for GRC, that actually starts tomorrow?
6 days from now.
Next week.
Monday. Yeah, they'll start installing the little small cells throughout the school, and so about 2 weeks after spring break, high school should have 5G.
And that was something that they're doing for free after we started identifying that we are concerned about issues for reliable cell service. And it's, it's an inconvenience to not have reliable cell service until there's a situation, and then it could be an emergency. So Mr. Kaysen has worked hard at getting that done. Something else I wanted to bring up, and especially tonight after we've talked about the folder, how the folder systems are working, I'd like to bring information to you all for the e-meetings through KSBA, because it's through your portal, and we would be able to suppress those documents that we can't have out, but everything would be there. You could click on them. They would be more readily available. Ms. Nance has actually worked and got information from KSBA. So I can send that to you all so that you can start thinking about if we want to move to that platform instead of having the Google files where you're going to start going back and forth. Everything's still there, and it's either hidden from the public because it's protected, like in those contracts that we have to do, or personnel information that we don't want everybody to see, or it's not, but it's all still in one spot. So you would be able to click on them and see things.
And it's in the KSBA portal? And
it's in the KSB, it's called e-meetings, and so I can send you information, but that's something that I wrote down thinking that we might want to move to. Standard 6, collaborative leadership. Really excited about the crisis team. I hate to use the word excited about that, but we had a goal of 5 community members. Yes, we have close to 20 community members, and that is also partnering mainly with our ministerial association. And then our counselors were going to be trained at a smaller level. All of them want to be trained on the crisis intervention plan. And we have also included several of our FRCs, Mr. Keene and Mr. Howard, because of the age of their students. We had about 47 folks at our crisis team. We actually found the resource through the Ministerial Association that is FEMA approved, and it's more on psychological trauma. So it's not somebody who's going to go in and clean up after the hurricane, that we want to be able to have those kinds of supports too. But this is a team that's going to be able to go in and help work through that so people can process what is happening. And that's a big scale level, what we saw in Western Kentucky. But it could also be some of the more tragic things that I don't want to verbalize so much because it's just not pleasant conversation, but things that happen in school systems that you wish you were ready for when they happened. And so Ms. Bush and her team has worked very diligently at researching this. Dr. Livingood has brought us resources, and then we've been able to expand that. So we had our first pre-training with 47 staff, and most of our base team was also included in that. Our overall athletic review. So this is something else that has actually come up from a couple of you. One is the underuse of our facilities. We have gorgeous facilities, But we also want to make sure that they're used at a higher level with our community. So we're kind of vetting some of those systems and resources that we can make sure that what we have is being used equitably, that we're charging appropriately to generate revenue, and that we're not being taken advantage of when another group can definitely afford to come in and use our facilities. And that we're making sure that we can capture that, because Mr. Stump is going to come back and say, hey, we need more money for this because we only charged $1,800 for this, but it cost us $5,000 to repair whatever malfunction that when they were there. So we're doing some of those things. And then on the flip side, we have a lot of non-revenue sports that I know we all worry about, like are their needs getting met? Well, ESSER dollars also allow us to have flexibility to make sure that we're meeting those needs. Do they need other uniforms? Or are there nets behind drops that aren't working? So I've actually been vetting all of that with, because one team came and asked for something individually through one of you all, and that came to me, and I just can't in good conscience say, yes, let's do this for so-and-so. I want to equitably look at all of so I've asked the AD to do a survey with our coaches, and he has started getting that information at GRC. And again, mainly those non-revenue sports like swimming and bowling and tennis and cheerleading, and there's like 5 or 6 of them. So I trusted that he properly vetted that. So we've got a list together. Now we're going back to the school and saying, what are you all going to pay for? What are the needs versus the wants? And then we're going to have that, those ESSER dollars don't have to come and necessarily be board approved. So we're going to work that out with the school. And there may be things that's a want, so it's not going to happen right now. That might be something that we will help plan for next year. So we're working on that, starting the RDC process as well. Also had some comments about the BSN contract. Apparently that was approved a couple of years ago. Supposedly all of the coaches want to get rid of BSN. Well, that's not necessarily the case. When you do a survey, some are happy with it. Some are like, yeah, I'm happy with it, but I wish we weren't under contract. Some want to go with something completely different. So, but we're under contract and we have to follow the terms of the contract, number one. Number two, then I need a vet to determine if we need to go with a different contract, or do we open it up and let individual teams decide for themselves. Then you run the risk of losing revenue that can get kicked back to the school, which helps support your non-revenue sports. So this became a little bit of a bigger process than just saying.
That's what they used to do.
Yeah,
So,
instead of
it
just
was hard
saying,
to-
you can do this or you can do that.
Everyone was doing
On
their
their
own
own.
thing, and
Yeah.
no one knew what was going on.
But I equate that to like the Toshiba thing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could get a better deal with one.
And I also
Yeah,
want to
but
make sure that we're meeting the needs of the students and the coaches. Like, I want them to be happy, but I am one like, well, if we're now this is brought to my attention, if we're under contract, we're going to follow the terms of the contract.
Absolutely.
So that's still a work in progress, but I just want to keep you all up to date that those are some of the things that we're working on with athletics. Under influential leadership, working with BCTC, but Bluegrass Area Development. We're actually working through a lot of the regional concerns between ATC and CTE pathways. That's kind of a continuing, like your brother's sister, but you also fight a lot because you're fighting for the same kids. You end up having overlapping programs, and that's not just in Clark County, but that's regionally. So I'm helping work with that group on recruitment and retention of students. One of the things that we're doing is we're actually working with smoke signals. I went last week, and we're going to try to do promo videos on our CTE programs and on our ATC programs, so that we can not just show sophomores and juniors, but we want our middle school students to know what they're getting ready to walk into when they come to GRC and ATC, what's going to be available to them. And then we're doing program reviews, more so at the ATC and BCTC, because I don't want them competing either. Right. Because if not, you're going to end up having a lot of unfinished pathways or unfinished degrees or unfinished this, and nobody's winning. Definitely not the kid. So we want the student to graduate with associates, or we want them to graduate with industry certificates, or we want them to graduate with completed pathways, or what we saw up here just a moment ago with 100% pass rate for phlebotomy. I went to Frankfurt, spent a day there doing legislative advocacy with BCTC. Our main focus was around, again, expanding the dual credit. They're currently trying to add it to 10 credit hours, which is awesome. But when you graduate and you want to go into one of these 5 workforce ready scholarships, you can get that for free. So what we're advocating for is allow that scholarship to be used in high school where we can graduate kids with an associate's degree. So I met with about 5 or 6 representatives and senators that were either from our district, obviously, or authors or co-sponsors of those bills. Also took time to talk about pros and cons of Senate Bill 1. We talked about some technology advocacy because that's not been refunded in a long time. I thank them for their generous support of our family resource centers and the extra funding that we're getting there. And we just have overall conversation about what public educators are facing still in this difficult time. And then some of the other things that come before us, I really just reminded them to be considerate and conscious of the unintended consequence or that unfunded mandate. Or you're going to give us this money, but really you're taking it from that pot. It's kind of like the stealing from Peter to pay Paul, like just to be mindful of where that money is being transferred. And there was several other superintendents over the past 60 days that have been there doing the same thing. CAS, KEC, KEDC, really working with them on almost triple vetting the work that we're doing in MTSS. So Ms. Bonfield and Ms. Fitton and Mr. Chinaki, they're all working together actually with Ms. Bush especially around the terrace metrics and social emotional side. Well, then we also are having that vetted and training coming in through CKEC. Then we have KEDC coming in, and I'm working with him on that diversity, inclusion, and equity side. So we're really kind of triangulating all of our resources to make sure that the products that we're sending out to schools and getting input from them are high quality. The cohort 10, they keep having all of our superintendents training, so there's the list of the things that I've worked on this month. And then I'm also in a serving leader community cohort with other executives from Clark County. And so our focus this month was on what is our organization initiative and how does it impact our community. So I shared our crisis intervention plan that we're working on, and those other organizations from the hospital and the foundation, BCTC, they all went around and shared. So we got to actually connect how we could better partner with other industry and community relationships. And then Kentucky Women in Educational Leadership, there's a CEO group that I belong to that are for women, female superintendents. And we just discussed overall challenges facing districts. Bonding and district finance, we went through some modules on that, instructional practices, and again, just advocacy overall on things that we need to do better from the superintendent's platform. And then we shared some of those resources actually with our other colleagues, our male colleagues, that they needed to have that too. And then I finished up the Option 7 Task Force, which is providing input and feedback, reviewed all of the guidelines so that we could make a proposal to KDE to actually redo the model so that we could, I don't want to say expand, but it's to improve the Option 7 program so that you can acquire better prepared teachers coming into the workforce. And then my upcoming dates are listed there for you as well. Do you have any questions?
No, busy, thank you.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda items. Is there any discussion? Questions on anything?
I just have an observation from our last meeting.
Yeah.
We included the last item, which is
42, didn't we?
Last time it was account payables. We always have taken that off in the past, and I didn't really think about that after we left the meeting. And I know we've always taken it off well before I was on the board. It's always been taken
separate.
off and voted on separately. I don't know if there's a policy, but I don't know. There's been several superintendents, several board attorneys. We've always taken it off and voted on it separately. So I don't know if there's a reason why we included it, or if there's a reason we just did it as convenience, or.
I'm not aware of any policy requiring you to vote on separately.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, but if this is what the board wants, then I would prefer that we list it separately.
Right.
So
I
if
agree
it's
with
in
you.
consent,
Yes.
then we'll leave it in consent. If it's something that you all want it to be removed and separately, then we could actually move it up to the finance update. So that it could be there as a separate motion all on its own.
Yeah, because it seems kind of weird how it was in consent, but then it was always pulled out
Yeah.
by itself.
I agree.
Yeah.
I never understood that.
Yeah,
but-
so if it's in consent, and that's allowable to be in consent, then we don't need to pull it out. If it's there, you just approve it with all the consent items. If you have questions about it, we could actually ask those questions during the update and still leave it in the consent, and then it gets approved as the consent, or we can remove it. I know it's always gonna be removed in case you have questions.
Yeah.
So do you all like it removed? Do you wanna leave it in?
I would prefer for it to be removed, so we
Okay.
run it separately, but whatever the board wishes.
And I think if we do take it out, it's a good idea to put it in with the finance.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try that next time, see how
Okay.
it goes.
Okay.
See how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of
It
moving
is kind
it.
of
an
odd. I don't know
observation.
why. I've been coming to board meetings since 2001,
I see.
And it's
Alicia
always
is
been
writing
like
it down.
that?
and it's always been like that.
Okay.
It's always, I mean, it's always been,
Yeah.
All right.
Doesn't make it always right though, does it?
Yeah.
I guess not. I
So
don't
if
know.
you all
I thought there was,
Did you think there was a
was there
reason
like
why?
a
Because
KRS that it
Yeah.
had to be
Yeah.
Yeah, have
pulled
you all heard
out?
the-
I
have you all
don't think
heard
so.
the-
I've seen it in consent with other ones.
Oh, you
Yeah.
have, and they don't pull it out?
Yeah, have you all
Okay.
heard the story about why your grandma's ham's so good?
Mm-mm.
And then your mom has a ham, and you're like, "Why are you cutting the end off of it?" And she says that's what Grandma always did. And then
Yes, and
You
then-
finally go to Grandma's, and
She
she's
goes, I
like,
never did that.
"Well," she goes, "My pan wasn't big enough."
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it's a little joke we've said before. So let's just, for the sake of everybody being comfortable, let's go ahead and approve 21 through 41, and then we'll
Okay.
do 42 separately.
All right,
And then next month, we'll move 42 to finance.
to finance.
Okay, or that item to finance.
Gotcha.
I might change our language from like update.
Yeah,
make
it'll be
Yeah.
listed as a
Yeah.
separate item.
Separate item, yeah.
I make a motion to approve items 21 through 41.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. All right, and number 42, consider approval to authorize payment of salaries and accounts payables. I'll make that motion.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-0.
And Mr. Colby, here's this one for you.
thank you.
And Ms. Considine and Ms. Richardson, I'll get copies made.
Okay, perfect.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.